Ajuin joins his school's baseball team, Akagi Junior High, but they end up losing because of his poor pitching. When the players start laughing at him, he slaps every one of them and even the umpire. The next day, his teacher scolds him and says that he used violence instead of following the rules and tells him that he ruined his very last middle school game. Later, Ajuin tells his classmates that even if they cannot go to the nationals in junior high, they can still make it come true once they are in high school. After that, Ajuin spends all of his time studying so he can pass the test for high school. One day, a girl named Rei Takashima, who is an assistant director of the Sidu High baseball team, comes to his house. Ajuin does not know what Sidu is, so his grandpa explains to him that it is a very famous school where many professional baseball players have graduated from. Rei tells him that she had been watching his last game closely and she believes that Ajuin really has a gift as a pitcher. When his family hears that, they push Ajuin to accept Rei's offer, but he refuses and says he will not accept it. After that, Rei asks him to at least pay them a visit, and she also tells him that his final pitch in the game was not like any other pitch she had seen before. She then explains that if he joins Sidu High, he will gain a lot of new experience, learn many fresh things, and even have the chance to reach the nationals. The next day, Ajuin visits Sidu High and he is shocked when he sees the amazing facilities that are available for the players there. While he is looking around, he notices a player named Azuma, who is known as a monster because he already has 42 home runs in his high school career. Azuma gets angry at one of his teammates and yells that the boy is pitching like a coward, and he also says that if he is not even going to try then he should just go back. Hearing this, Ajuin becomes mad and starts joking about Azuma's big belly. When Rei sees the two of them, she suggests that they should settle it by having a match. Another Sidu player, Miyuki Kanzuya, says that he will be the one to catch Ajuin's pitches. While Ajuin warms up on the side, Rei tells Miyuki that Ajuin's pitches are very different and special, which makes Miyuki curious to know more. After that, their match starts and Ajuin struggles a lot to pitch the ball, and he feels so nervous that he ends up throwing the ball straight into the ground. Miyuki quickly calls a timeout and tells Ajuin that he can see he threw the ball into the dirt on purpose, so he asks him why he did it, but Ajuin explains that he thought Azuma would crush it if he had really pitched there. Miyuki then tells him clearly that he is his partner and that he wants to take down the monster known as Azuma together with him. After that, Miyuki asks Ajuin if he really wants to keep playing baseball all alone, because he believes the best and strongest pitches are like works of art that only happen when both the pitcher and the catcher put their effort together as one. Afterward, Ajuin throws the ball with so much power that it becomes a strike, and Miyuki starts thinking that if they keep working on Ajuin's speed in the future. Ajuin throws it again and this time Azuma almost blasts it into a home run. Then Ajuin keeps pitching more balls and Azuma is able to hit every single one, but Miyuki realizes that the more Ajuin throws, the faster his pitches start to get. At the very end, Ajuin makes up his mind to throw the strongest pitch he has ever thrown in his life, and with that he finally manages to strike out Azuma. Later that night, Ajuin reads about Miyuki in a baseball magazine and thinks about how cool he really is, but at the same time he feels sad because he cannot just move to Tokyo and leave his close friends behind. The next day, Ajuin's friends at school tell him that his grandpa told them that he is going to Sidu. They all cheer for him and tell him to go to Tokyo so he can represent them proudly. Later at home, Ajuin starts crying hard because he feels like he cannot leave his close friends behind, but his grandpa suddenly punches him. In the end, Ajuin finally agrees that he will go and join Sidu. On the day he leaves, after Ajuin gets on the train, his friends admit among themselves that they really loved playing baseball with him and deep inside they wanted him to stay so they could all keep playing together again. Afterward, Ajuin arrives at Sidu High where Rei warns him that he should speak with proper manners or else she will have to beat some sense into him. When he walks into the dorm, he suddenly gets excited after seeing all the baseball gear placed all around the place. Soon Ajuin finds his room, and it turns out that his roommates are Kuramochi and Masuko. When he opens the door, Kuramochi scares him and then welcomes Ajuin to Sidu High School. On the very next day, all the players gather on the field for their very first training session, but Ajuin oversleeps and shows up late. The coach begins the morning by listening to everyone's introductions, but in the middle of it Ajuin bumps into Miyuki, who quickly tells him to stay quiet. Miyuki also explains that their head coach, Tesshin Kataoka, is very strict about discipline. Miyuki tells Ajuin to quietly sneak into the line while the other players are still giving their introductions, but as Ajuin tries to run over, Miyuki suddenly yells out loud and exposes him on purpose. Coach Kataoka shows no mercy at all and tells Ajuin that he will never become a pitcher if he cannot even learn to show up on time. As punishment, Kataoka also makes Miyuki run laps, and he adds Ajuin's two roommates as well for letting him oversleep in the first place. Later on, everyone gets ready to show their strength during the practice session, but the coach stops Ajuan and says he cannot take part because he did not apologize the way the others did. Hearing that, Ajuan speaks up and claims that the reason he came to this school is to become the ace pitcher of the baseball team. The coach then gives Ajuan a challenge, saying that if he can throw the ball all the way 90 meters to the fence, then he will be allowed to join the practice with the others. Ajuan accepts the test right away, but because of his wild and trash pitch, he misses the target in a spectacular way, so the coach refuses to let him join the daily training. On the next morning, before the training starts, Takashima Rei asks the coach if he really plans to make Ajuan give up on his dream of being a pitcher. At that very moment, they notice Ajuan already out on the training grounds, running with all his energy before anyone else has even arrived. Meanwhile, 3 girls are chatting about the team, but suddenly one of them slips and falls while carrying a bucket full of baseballs. Her name is Haruno and she is a manager like she always dreamed of being, but she keeps getting yelled at by the upperclassmen. Later in class, she notices Ajuan getting scolded by the teacher for falling asleep at his desk, and she realizes that he must be the same boy who was running on the grounds the day before. Some boys in class tell the teacher that Ajuan is not even part of their team, but Ajuan shouts back that he will be the ace player one day, which makes everyone in the room laugh at him. However, Haruno thinks that Ajuan is very like her. At the same time, the Sidu baseball team is preparing to play a match against Ikadai 3rd High School, the same team that defeated them back in the fall season. All the players start walking out together for the big match except for Ajuan, who is still not allowed to join the team. Afterward, Ajuan begins his running practice again, but he suddenly gets hit by a tire that Haruno accidentally pushes in his direction. Meanwhile, in the first inning of the game, Miyuki hit a huge 3-run homer and the Sidu team starts performing even better than they ever have before. While the match is going on, Ajuan is off on his own, practicing throwing and catching the ball by himself, but then another boy comes over and asks him if he wants to play together. Back in the game, Miyuki once again makes a perfect catch, showing his strong skills, but then their coach turns to Tamba and questions him, asking what he has been doing during the last 2 years since he still cannot pitch properly the way he should. On the other hand, the boy named Furuya and Yunji plays catching, but Furuya says that there is something wrong with Yunji's pitching. Afterward, Furuya tries his pitching and when he throws the ball, Yunji's gloves blow away. Later that night, Tamba got his ace title revoked and Sidu only won because Kawakami replaced him. The next day, everyone gets shocked to see Furuya's pitching and the coach decides to form a team with just first year. The next day, Miyuki sees Ajuan eating in a messy way like a dog and tells him that the first years and the upperclassmen are going to have a game soon. Furuya also shows up and tells Miyuki that he does not plan on letting anyone hit his pitches in tomorrow's match and that he wants Miyuki to be the one to catch them. Hearing his words, the others get angry at Furuya's attitude, but Tamba steps in and warns them to stay away from him. Later, Ajuan walks into the bath and finds the coach already there, so he decides to join him. The coach asks how many days Ajuan has been running with the tires, and Ajuan answers that it has been 3 weeks. The coach then explains that when he was Ajuan's age, he used to train with heavy trucks instead of just tires. After that, the coach asks why Ajuan has not come to cheer for the team in even a single match, and Ajuan replies seriously that he came here to become the ace pitcher and that he cannot cheer for the other pitchers while chasing that dream. The coach realizes that Ajuan really has the spirit needed to become a true ace, so he tells him that he will give him another chance to prove himself. On the next day, Ajuan finally joins the team, but he is placed as an outfielder while it is Sidu's turn to pitch. Tamba becomes more fired up than ever and manages to strike out the batters with strong pitches. After that, the game keeps going until the 4th inning, but by then everyone starts losing their motivation because they are already 10 runs behind. At that moment, Ajuan tries to lift their spirits by cheering and telling them that there are still 6 full innings left, so they can still turn the score around. Afterward, the coach suddenly calls Ajuan and tells him to go pitch, but instead of pitching, Ajuan chooses to run back to the outfield to keep playing in his current spot. Afterward, Furuya takes the mound to pitch, and he throws the ball at the speed of a rocket, hitting so hard that it ends up destroying the coach's mask. The coach is shocked but then declares that Furuya has passed the test and that he can start practicing with the first string players from tomorrow. After that, it is Ajuan's turn to go for batting, but he swings at the first pitch and misses it terribly. On the next pitch, the catcher fails to hold the ball, and Ajuan reacts quickly by running with all his speed. He manages to reach the base just in time and saves himself, earning a safe spot on base. Afterward, another guy named Haruchi then promises that he will bring Ajuan home and make sure the first years score at least 1 run. Haruchi shows his skill as a brilliant batter, and because of his strong hit, Ajuan sprints with all his strength and scores. Even though Ajuan makes it on base, most of the other players have already lost hope. They are behind by double-digit runs, and the coach is just about ready to call the game off. At that moment, the Sakura-haired boy asks to be subbed in as the pinch hitter. He steps up and manages to hit a ball that looks far outside but ends up landing just inside the right field line. Ajuan slides into home plate and successfully makes the very first run of the game for their side. The first years finally get their first run, and now it is Ajuan's turn to pitch. As soon as he steps onto the mound, it becomes 3 up and 3 down. Ajuan's throws are wild, and even though his fastballs look like they are coming straight down the middle, they suddenly curve at the very end. Miyuki keeps pointing out that once Ajuan figures out what kind of pitch he really has, he will be able to become a true ace. Later, Ajuan faces his roommate Masuko in a battle of pure power, and even though he loses completely, he does not feel down. Instead of getting upset, Ajuan starts shouting with energy and pumping up his teammates, rather than waiting for them to motivate him. Ray watches this and explains that the way Ajuan used to pump up his team of amateurs back in junior high was already the sign of a real ace. Now he is showing that same side again, and the coach is clearly starting to feel impressed. Even after throwing a bad pitch, Ajuan still smiles and tells everyone that they should play again sometime. This shocks the others because they think he looks completely unfazed by his mistakes. After that, the game ends, and in the end the upperclassmen dominate. Later that evening, Ajuan's roommates find him in their room, laughing and enjoying himself instead of crying over the loss. While they're joking around, they notice a text on his phone from Wakana and immediately start teasing him, asking if she is his girlfriend. Ajuan quickly waves his hands and explains that she is only his childhood friend. Meanwhile, on the field, Miyuki and Furuya stay behind to practice. Miyuki crouches to catch Furuya's blazing pitches and nods in approval at his power. While they practice, Miyuki tells Furuya that he has already been promoted to the first string and that from now on, the two of them will form a strong battery together as pitcher and catcher. The next day, the coach shows everyone the team's main combo hitter, Yoichi, and then points out the second baseman, Ryosuke, before talking about some other really strong players who are part of the group. Later that night, a man goes to the coach and says the first years took a really big loss, but he still feels there are some amazing players left, like Furuya, who made everyone go silent with just one pitch. When the coach hears this, he says that if they win the game tomorrow, he will let Furuya play in the Kanto tournament for the first time. Right then, Ray asks the coach about Ajuan, but the coach thinks that the way Ajuan is right now, he is pretty much useless, even though deep down he feels Ajuan might end up becoming even greater than the other two players. The next day, the coach tells the first year that the tournament is only 2 months away, so they need to start their training right away. Furuya is said to work together with Miyuki, while Ajuan gets placed with Krisu Takigawa. But instead of catching Ajuan's pitches, Chris keeps giving him extra jobs that have nothing to do with pitching, which makes Ajuan feel like the coach that he has no real chance to succeed at Sea-Doo. However, Ajuan is still upset about the training plan that Chris gave him, and his anger only grows when he sees Furuya's pitches being caught by Miyuki without any problem. He talks to his roommates about the training list and they explain that it is made to help him avoid injuries. After hearing this, Ajuan feels motivated and keeps at it until 10 that night. Then he hurries to Chris's room and asks him to finally catch his pitches, but Chris refuses. He tells Ajuan that he has to follow the training plan for another year, and only after that will he start working with him seriously. A few days later, the team is at the Kanto tournament, and by the 7th inning Tamba loses his momentum. The coach decides to send Furuya in, and that decision only makes Ajuan burn with more determination. But Furuya shows just how strong he is, as his fastball are powerful and he strikes out 5 batters in a row right from the start. While watching this, Chris tells Ajuan that both of them are still second-string players, and they won't move up as long as Furuya and Miyuki stay on the team. But Ajuan, who never lets himself get discouraged, asks why Chris has already given up on himself. He says he still has 3 whole years to keep growing and to fight for the position of ace, and that's basically what Chris tells him too. Chris finally gives him the honest message, saying not to end up like he did. Both Ajuan and Furuya still have something really important to fix, and that's their fielding. The truth is, they're both terrible at it. Whenever Ajuan has to cover first base or home plate, he looks completely lost and confused. When Takashima points this out to him, he feels super embarrassed and doesn't know how to respond. Just then, Miyuki walks in and Ajuan starts talking non-stop about Chris, saying things like how Chris leaves practice early and how he slacks off, which ends up making Miyuki angry. What Ajuan doesn't realize is that all this time he's been hating Chris for reasons he doesn't even understand. The truth is, Chris has been working on recovering his injury. He hurt his shoulder really badly before and had to stay away from the team for a whole year. That was when Miyuki took over his spot, and even now Chris's shoulder is still not fully healed. After this, Ajuin starts acting really kind and thoughtful toward Chris, so much that he follows him around almost everywhere, to the point where it actually gets annoying. Most of the time Chris just tries to avoid him, but Ajuin keeps sticking close anyway. One day, Ajuin tells Chris that he wants a third training scroll too, but Chris tells him that he still doesn't even know how to use his body the right way. Chris also explains that Ajuin has to do the training menus by switching them around twice a week instead of rushing ahead. The next day, Ajuin begins carefully watching how the other players throw their pitches and how they play during practice games. He notices that everyone on the field moves together like one big play, and then he realizes that the only thing he really has left to learn now is how to work together and communicate properly with the catcher. Later that night, Miyuki meets Chris and tells him that Ajuin is like a hidden gem, rough around the edges but full of potential, and that he throws really fast-moving fastballs. Chris admits that he sees the talent, but he also says Ajuin is still not mature enough to help him grow properly. The next day, Chris finally gives in to Ajuin's non-stop persistence and agrees to catch a few of his pitches. After catching them, Chris explains to Ajuin that if he really wants to be an effective pitcher, then he has to discover what his true specialty is. At first, Ajuin feels totally lost because he knows his speed isn't the best, and he also can't throw breaking balls, so he doesn't understand what his strength could be. After thinking it through, he finally decides his specialty must be his control. But when he puts all of his focus only on control, his speed drops too much, and during a weekend game he ends up getting completely destroyed by the batters. During the practice match between T2 High School and C2 High School, Furuya ends up hurting his fingertips. Because of this injury, he is told that he cannot pitch at all, and the coach decides he has to rest for 2 full weeks before he can get back on the mound again. After the match, Haruchi shows off some amazing throws, and Rei thinks that when it comes to fielding skills, he is already on the same level as his brother, Ryosuke. While this is happening, Ajuin is still having a hard time. All he does is try to throw fastballs, but he isn't even paying attention to the way he grips or holds the ball. Chris then explains that the reason Furuya's fastballs are so strong is because he puts all the weight of the ball on the tips of his fingers and always releases it the same way every single pitch. Chris points out that Ajuin doesn't have speed, and he also doesn't have breaking balls, but he says there is still one clear way for someone like Ajuin to survive, that is by sharpening and perfecting his fastballs. Later that night, Ajuin keeps on practicing by himself, but Coach Kataoka catches him and warns him that he might separate him from Chris if he keeps this up. When Ajuin explains the reason why he has been training like this so late at night, the coach listens and then tells him to start doing a towel exercise instead, because it will help him build more flexibility and better control. The very next day, Chris comes over to Ajuin before heading out and tells him to make sure he keeps doing the exercise. As Chris watches for a moment, he suddenly realizes that Ajuin is already starting to look more stable, and his movements are slowly getting better. A few days later, Chris and Rei tell Ajuin that the pitcher lineup for the next game is ready, and they warn him that this will be his very last chance to prove himself. Soon after, the team from Kokudokan arrives, and everyone starts whispering that the coach must be crazy for putting the second-string players against such a strong opponent. But instead of Furuya taking the mound, it is Ajuin who steps up to pitch, and the crowd begins to wonder who this useless kid even is. Afterward, Ajuin gets ready on the mound and throws a fastball that goes flying straight past the catcher, and the catcher can't stop it. The players on the other team are shocked as they watch, thinking it looks like nothing more than a wild pitch that completely missed the strike zone. On Sidu's side, though, the players see the familiar form of the pitch and notice something different, because the catcher isn't even able to see Ajuin's arm move before the ball comes flying out and passes him. Ajuin then throws another pitch right after, and again the catcher fails to catch it, which makes people on the team start to get annoyed since it keeps slipping by. At the same time, Chris watches closely and thinks that in just one short week Ajuin has already managed to learn how to throw fastballs, which is something almost impossible for most players to do unless they have very flexible shoulders that allow the motion to work. When Rei sees what is happening, she quickly tells the coach to call Ajuin back because his pitching speed is still too new and not ready to be used in a real game. But Chris speaks up and asks the coach to let Ajuin stay on the mound a little longer. The coach then turns to Chris and asks if he himself is able to play, which shocks everyone since Chris hasn't played in a real game for almost a year because of his shoulder injury. After a pause, the coach decides to give Chris one final chance, knowing that he still wants to play baseball, and Chris agrees to step in. Later, when the bases get loaded with no outs, Coach Kataoka signals for a change. Most of the players on the team think that Ajuin will be the one taken out, but instead, the surprise comes when Chris is the one inserted into the game. In only 2 pitches, Chris completely changes the game from having no outs with 3 runners on base to suddenly 2 outs with just a runner left on first and second. During the play, the second baseman leaps up and throws the ball quickly to home plate, and right after that Chris fires a bullet throw straight to the right fielder, who is already covering first base. Then on the very next pitch, his third one, Chris picks off a runner and shuts down the threat. 3 pitches, 3 outs, and right there everyone finally gets to see with their own eyes just what kind of amazing catcher Chris really is. After the game, Chris asks Adrian what he usually thinks about when he throws the ball, and Adrian answers that he imagines a wall on the right-hand side. Chris then explains that if Adrian's body gets used to this image, he might eventually start throwing strikes that way, but for now it won't give him real control over the ball. To help him improve, Chris calls Miyuki to join them in the side so the 3 of them can work together on Adrian's new pitching form and try to get him to start throwing proper strikes. While they are practicing, Chris suddenly manages to catch one of Adrian's fastballs, and this completely shocks Adrian because he never expected Chris to be able to handle it. After that, the match keeps going, and this time Chris is able to catch Adrian's pitches, which helps them get another batter out. Right then, an older blonde man walks into the stadium, and everyone immediately recognizes him by his nickname, Animal. It turns out he is actually Chris's father, and he starts yelling at Chris for still playing baseball when his body is in such a condition. Soon after, it becomes Sidhu's turn to bat. Adrian is the first one to step up, and instead of swinging hard, he lays down a bunt and sprints as fast as he can, managing to get a score for the team. After him, Haruchi comes up to bat, but when he swings, the ball flies too far and ends up outside the stadium, which counts as a foul. Haruchi then hits a short single to right field, and it's just enough to let Chris run all the way from second base to home, while still keeping another runner safely on base. Chris is impressed and calls Haruchi a batting prodigy, saying he is perfect as the team's leadoff hitter. Meanwhile, Chris's father finally understands that what his son is doing is the right thing and that he won't regret it later, so he wishes him good luck. After that, Naoyuki Zazen, trying to break Sidhu's rhythm, suggests that they should aim for a specific target, and surprisingly, it's not Adrian but Chris. Zazen knows about Chris's shoulder injury and figures he no longer has the same strength and skill as before. Chris doesn't realize at first that he is the one being targeted, but soon he makes a few mistakes because of his injured shoulder, and that's when Zazen finally steps forward and makes it clear what his plan is. Afterward, Zazen Naoyuki comes up to bat, and he used to be Chris's biggest rival back in middle school. Now it's just Adrian and Chris trying to stop him from getting a big hit. The problem is that Chris isn't doing so great right now. His body isn't working the way it should and his right shoulder really hurts. There are runners standing on first and third base with only one player already out. Chris starts thinking about all the bad things that could happen, but Adrian keeps it simple and tells him to just worry about the guy at the plate. However, Zazen decides to try a squeeze bunt to help the runner on third base get home and score. Adrian sees what's happening and throws the ball low to the ground on purpose, just like he did when he faced Azuma before. The catcher does a great job making sure that crazy pitch doesn't roll away. Chris grabs the ball and jumps up fast to try and tag out the runner at third base. After that play, Zazen can only hit foul balls when he swings. He fouls off pitch after pitch. But all this time at the plate shows something interesting about Zazen that's a lot like Chris. He's hurt too. Something called a ligament in his right knee got torn up, and he's not the same player he used to be. Just like Chris and his arm problems. Zazen's right leg and Chris's right arm both keep twitching and shaking. Now it's really up to Adrian to decide how this whole thing ends. After throwing maybe 5 or 6 pitches, Adrian gets back to pitching the way he used to. He's going to play tough baseball the way real players are supposed to play it. He throws the ball right down the middle of the plate. Even though he walked 6 batters during the game, he didn't let any of them score a run. Finally, Adrian strikes out Zazen. When it's all over, Adrian and Haruchi get picked to be on the main team. But the coach takes time to talk to about a dozen other older players who won't get another chance to play on the first team. The next day, everyone talks about how Adrian has made it into the first string, and most of them keep saying that he doesn't really deserve to be there. At the same time, Miyuki is sitting with the scorebook from the Kokodokan game, going over the records carefully. Kuramochi points out that Miyuki has been crying since last night because of the injury, but Miyuki brushes it off and says he will recover soon. Later in class, Adrian starts to realize that he didn't actually deserve such an important position yet, so he decides to push himself harder in everything he does, hoping to make up for it and do it for the senpais and teammates who were not chosen. His determination surprises the classmates around him, but it also worries Kuramochi, who notices that Adrian is already overdoing things and pushing himself too much. Adrian keeps training as hard as he can, but when Chris notices that he is starting to overwork himself, he asks Miyuki to pull Ajuin into the indoor training facility. There, they make him practice pick-off throws and leg positioning drills so that he can improve safely without ending up hurting. Later on, the coach arrives at the field and another man asks him if Tamba is not doing well, since it looks like he moved another pitcher up into the first string. But the coach explains that it doesn't matter even if the pitching is rough or not perfect, because as long as it helps the team win, that is enough. He says that is the kind of ace he is looking for, one who can carry the team to victory no matter what. Later, Furuya gets reminded that he has to keep his nails trimmed, and he is also told to start doing pick-off training just like the others. During practice, Furuya even tells Miyuki that he has a twisted personality, showing his usual blunt way of speaking. At the same time, Tamba watches his rivals closely and promises himself that he will not hand over the ace number to anyone else. When Hell Week begins, Tamba and Kawakami are sent to the side to focus on pitching, while Ajuin and Furuya are forced to spend their time on fielding practice and base coverage drills. After finishing the coverage situations, the two are sent out again and this time to work on outfield catching. Meanwhile, inside the field, Tamba secretly works on a special pitch with Mayachi, who is the secondary varsity catcher. As the training grows harder with sprints and longer night workouts added in, Ajuin realizes that he and the other first years were never prepared for something this intense. On the second day of training camp, Ajuin steps into the batting circle but every ball ends up at his feet. After that, he faces 200 soft toss batting drills, fielding practice, and running drills all in just the morning. Breakfast is no break either, since each player is forced to eat at least 3 bowls of rice before they're allowed to leave. Ajuin goes back out for fielding practice without landing a single proper hit, but he brushes it off and blames it on being too tired. As the camp goes on, he starts to notice small improvements in his form and stamina, but when it comes to outfield practice, his poor plays pile up. In the end, the coaches pull him out unable to ignore his mistakes any longer. Just as the seniors expected, it doesn't take long for the gap between the upperclassmen and the first years to show. By evening, Coach Kataoka calls in all the catchers to review the pitchers' performances. Since Sidhu's biggest weakness is not having a true ace, the main goal of training is to polish Tamba, Kawakami, Furuya, and Ajuin into potential aces. To push them even harder, 3 practice games are scheduled for the coming weekend, designed to test the players when they're at their most exhausted. Ajuin and Furuya are set to pitch in Saturday's game, while Tamba and Kawakami are scheduled for Sunday's doubleheader. After practice, Furuya and Ajuin are called to Miyuki's room. When they walk in, they see the varsity upperclassmen hanging out. At first, Ajuin panics, thinking they're going to rough him up for taking Chris' roster spot. But Miyuki's real reason is to help the 2 freshman pitchers spend time with the seniors who will be backing them up on the field. Ajuin and Furuya go into the side on 5th day where they are told to pitch, and they also hear that they will be throwing in the batting practice too, so this is the first time they actually get to join in the training and do practice for real. At the same time, the seniors, who are led by Yuki, keep working hard as the coach gives them personal fielding practice that lasts all the way until evening, and he keeps pushing them again and again until they reach their limits and can barely keep going. However, on 6th day Ajuin and Furuya are back in the field again so they can keep throwing and get ready for their game that is coming up on Saturday, and they know this practice matters a lot. Meanwhile, Coach Kataoka punishes the older players by stepping in himself during their fielding practice, and he takes the role of the batter, which makes the training way harder for the seniors because they have to handle his strong hits while still trying to keep up with his strict way of watching them. After that, the game between Sidhu and Kiryu begins with Furuya taking the mound to pitch first, while Ajuin sits on the side burning with frustration and anger because he wants to prove himself too. The coach then speaks to Furuya and tells him that he should just go out and get crushed today, since after all the tough camp training and with so much fatigue built up, he does not expect him to perform well in this match. Right away in the very first inning, Furuya gives up 3 runs, which puts Sidhu in trouble. On the other side, Kiryu's coach Matsumoto realizes Furuya is clearly not in top form, yet he still orders his batters to keep attacking. Then, when another Kiryu batter hits the ball, Ryosuke and Kuramochi quickly work together in the infield, and they pull off a clean double play to stop the pressure. After that, the match keeps going with Miyuki getting another player out with his really good catching skills. Then it's Sidhu's turn to bat and Kuramochi goes up first. Kuramochi hits the ball a little bit toward third base and almost makes it to first base because he runs really fast. The second batter, Ryosuke, fights against Kiryu's pitcher and fouls off 10 balls in a row. The third batter, Isashiki, hits the ball and helps Ryosuke get to second base. However, Yuki comes up to bat next and hits the ball straight toward the left field fence, but Sidhu gets 1 run on the scoreboard. Then in 4 innings, Furuya already gives up 11 runs to the other team. Not only that, but he also throws more than 100 pitches already. Furuya asks for a timeout, which makes all his teammates feel surprised. Miyuki runs over to him really quickly because he thinks that maybe Furuya can't pitch anymore. But Furuya actually asks Miyuki to give him some advice on how he can stop giving up runs, which really surprises the catcher. Miyuki notices that Furuya is still hanging on and has not given up, and this makes him feel really happy inside. He tells Furuya that he should start pitching while believing in his teammates, instead of trying to do everything alone. Furuya is surprised by this advice, and in that moment, he remembers his middle school days when his teammates refused to play with him and left him practicing all by himself most of the time. Now, Furuya throws his pitch while trusting the target in Miyuki's mitt, and the batter ends up hitting a high fly ball straight to center field. After that, Kiryu's pitcher Tachi strikes out another Seedoo batter, and as the game keeps moving forward, his pitches get even faster. Tachi then grins a crazy smile, enjoying overpowering Seedoo. Soon, it becomes Seedoo's turn to pitch again, and Miyuki tells Furuya to try throwing a pitch that they have never once practiced before. It turns out that Tachi himself is stepping up to bat, and when Furuya delivers the pitch, it is an extremely slow ball that completely throws Tachi off, causing him to swing and miss. Right after that, Miyuki signals for a forkball, but by mistake Furuya ends up throwing a fastball and the ball suddenly drops down right near the batter's box. This shocks Tachi, who swings but misses again, and it also surprises Miyuki, who for the very first time is unable to cleanly catch one of Furuya's pitches. Furuya throws another fastball, and this time it completely strikes out Tachi. Right after that, the coach turns to Ajuin and asks if he is ready, since once Furuya finishes his turn at batting, Ajuin will be the next one to go in. Furuya then moves over to play in left field, and for the first time since the match against Azuma, Ajuin and Miyuki stand together as a battery once more. Afterward, the two start practicing, and Ajuin thinks to himself that the only reason he is at Seedoo is because he had the chance to meet Miyuki. When the next Kiryu batter steps up, he believes he will easily crush the first pitch, but Ajuin's unusual pitching form catches him off guard right away. The batter cannot figure out from where the ball is coming, and the first pitch goes straight down the middle for a clean strike. On the second pitch, the batter makes late contact and sends the ball toward right field, and even though the swing was behind, it still manages to slip past both the first baseman and the second baseman. The runner makes it safely on base, and now Kiryu's next batter steps up to the plate, ready to swing. The runner suddenly tries to steal the next base, and Ajuin sees a chance to show off the pickoff move that he once learned from Chris, but instead of pulling it off, he makes a mistake and commits a balk. Because of the ball, the runner on first base is automatically moved up to second without even needing to run. Miyuki then goes over and reminds Ajuin to stop getting distracted and focus only on the batter, before signaling him to throw an inside pitch. Ajuin, however, is still throwing too high, and when he makes his next pitch it travels straight down the middle of the plate, though he cleverly disguises it by making it look like another pickoff throw. The batter rushes his swing and ends up hitting it in a hurry, but the ball goes directly back into Ajuin's glove, turning it into an easy out. After that, Rei starts to wonder what Coach Kataoka really thinks about Ajuin's pitching, while Matsumoto studies Ajuin's moving fastball and wonders if Ajuin might be the hidden weapon of Seedoo. A little later, Miyuki speaks to Ajuin and tells him that the earlier double play he got was nothing more than plain luck, and warns him that if he keeps throwing his pitches straight down the middle, the opposing team will soon start scoring runs without any problem. The game then moves on with Yuki stepping up to bat, but Tachi keeps throwing balls outside the zone. Even so, Yuki still ends up getting out, and the next batter, Matsuko, comes forward but also fails as he hits a fly ball. Next, it becomes Miyuki's turn to bat, and right before Tachi can even throw the pitch, Yuki takes the chance and successfully steals a base. Miyuki has not managed to get a hit yet in the game, but this time he pulls an outside fastball and sends a clean single into right field. Thanks to that hit, Yuki races all the way home and scores, and during Shiresu's at-bat, Miyuki continues pushing forward until he makes it safely to third base. With 2 outs already on the board and a runner waiting on third, Ajuin comes up to bat, but he ends up striking out to end the inning. As the top of the 7th begins, the first Kiryu batter steps right up to the very front of the batter's box, and Miyuki starts to wonder if they have finally figured out the trick behind Ajuin's moving pitch. On the first throw, the ball dives straight into Masuko's gut, allowing Seedoo to get the easy out. Then, the dangerous batters of Kiryu come up, and the third-hole hitter manages to reach first base safely, but Ajuin stays focused and powers through by striking Tachi out. In the end, Kiryu ends up winning the game, and afterward the two coaches then step forward and shake hands respectfully before Kiryu's team gets ready to leave. Later in the evening, Ajuin spots Furuya running around the field with the heavy tire he always uses for training, and the two of them get into an argument about who really has the right to practice with it. After the inning ends, everyone begins complimenting Tamba's pitching, and Chris thinks to himself that Tamba looks completely ready for the upcoming summer tournament. Still, Ray worries deep down about whether Tamba can overcome fragility, which is his biggest weakness when the pressure gets high. While sitting on the bench, Tamba tells Miyuki that he wants to make the forkball the center of his plays during the last 3 innings of the game, but Miyuki has a different opinion. Miyuki explains that there is no need to show more of that pitch, especially with Inishiro's team closely watching from the stands, and he points out that just one forkball was already enough to throw their opponents off balance. When Coach Kataoka asks him about his true intentions, Tamba answers that he is doing this to defeat his own weakness and prove that he can truly stand as the ace of the team. Miyuki finally agrees to follow Tamba's plan after listening to his determination. Soon after, the umpire announces the next batter, and it turns out that Tamba himself is stepping up to the plate. On the very first pitch, disaster strikes as the ball hits Tamba directly in the face, causing him to collapse on the ground in pain. Coach Kataoka immediately rushes to his side and he asks for the game to be stopped right there. Later on, the Sea-Doo team receives troubling news that Tamba may not even be able to participate in the summer tournament preliminaries, and this shocking possibility leaves the entire team with deflated spirits and heavy hearts. Finally, it becomes the last day of the training camp, and this baseball game has Sea-Doo playing against Inishiro High School. Kawakami takes the mound as the starting pitcher for Sea-Doo, but he has a really hard time throwing strikes and getting batters out. Ajuin sees that Kawakami can't pitch well anymore, so he asks Coach Kataoka if he can go in and pitch instead, but Coach Kataoka says no. Kurimochi and Masuko feel really shocked and upset by how Ajuin doesn't understand what's happening, so they grab Ajuin and pull him to a corner. They explain to him that Inishiro is not playing with their best players today and is using their backup players instead. Afterward, Sea-Doo's catcher for this game, Mayachi Keisuke, walks up to Kawakami on the pitcher's mound and grabs Kawakami's baseballs, then tells him that he needs to pitch with more confidence and that he promises to catch any type of pitch that Kawakami throws to him. When Kawakami hears these encouraging words from his catcher, it gives him the confidence he needs and he throws a really good strike. That practice game ends up finishing with Inishiro winning the match against Sea-Doo. After the game is over, Ajuin starts cleaning up the team bench when 2 players from Inishiro come over and start talking to him. One of the Inishiro players asks Ajuin if Furuya is going to pitch in their next game, but then the other Inishiro player starts making fun of his teammate by asking that question. Ajuin feels confused about why these guys are acting weird, but he answers their question by telling them that Furuya will not be pitching. The Inishiro player keeps asking Ajuin more and more questions about Furuya, which starts making Ajuin feel really annoyed and frustrated. Ajuin begins talking way too much about how Sea-Doo has this amazing new pitcher and about how badly Furuya performed in recent games. But before Ajuin can say anything else that might be important, Miyuki and Kurimochi show up and join the conversation. Miyuki tells the Inishiro players the truth about Furuya's current pitching condition, but the Inishiro player acts like he doesn't believe what Miyuki is saying. They talk for a short while before the Inishiro players head off for their game against Chihoku. It is then revealed that the 2 players are Inishiro's main battery, the second-year ace pitcher Narumiya Mei, who Miyuki sees as Sea-Doo's destined rival, and Harada Masatoshi, the strong captain and catcher. Miyuki quickly tells both Furuya and Ajuin to carefully watch Narumiya so they can learn from him. On the mound, Narumiya shows off his incredible pitching skills, leaving everyone impressed. Finally, the last game begins between Sea-Doo and Chihoku, with Sea-Doo's ace Tamba forming a battery alongside Miyuki. Tamba starts strong, throwing a curveball that almost scrapes the ground and then follows it with a sharp fastball. During practice, Ajuin and Furuya spend time working on their basic fundamentals under the guidance of Chris, who patiently goes over the details with them and afterward reminds the 2 that besides baseball, they also need to start preparing for their upcoming final exams. Later, Ajuin begs Kanemaru Shinji to help him study, and after some hesitation Kanemaru reluctantly agrees to lend him a hand. Out on the field, however, the usual energy of practice seems missing, and the atmosphere feels heavy. Because of this, Coach Kataoka calls over Yuki and Isashiki, telling them that it is their job to lift the team's spirit, and he gives them clear instructions to head to practice after every field session. Later that same afternoon, Ajuin and Furuya walk past and are surprised to see Yuki and Isashiki actually throwing pitches inside the field. Afterward, everyone begins training hard for the upcoming tournament, though Yuki just stands still with a bat in his hands for nearly 10 minutes straight. Even so, each player continues to train in their own style and Coach Kataoka carefully guides them so that their practice matches their flow. On another side of the field, Haruchi shows his talent by hitting the ball cleanly with his bat, proving that his skills are just as sharp as his older brother Ryosuke's. Meanwhile, Furuya focuses on controlling his pitches with the help of Miyuki and Chris, while Ajuin practices alone, throwing again and again into the net. As Chris quietly observes Ajuin, he secretly starts to think about ways he can fine-tune Ajuin's unusual grip and transform it into a dangerous weapon that no batter will ever be able to handle. Around the same time, the results of the final exams are also announced, adding yet another layer of tension for the players. While Ajuin barely manages to pass his school subjects, Furuya does not do as well and is told that he will need to take the makeup tests. The very next day, Coach Kataoka gathers the team and begins handing out jerseys with numbers, marking an important moment for everyone. Tamba is the first one called, and he proudly receives the ace number, showing his place as the team's leader on the mound. After that, the other players are called one by one to receive their numbers as well, but when it comes to Ajuin, he does not get one at first because he failed and the coach tells him he must pass the makeup test before he can officially be part of the lineup. The coach then keeps calling out the rest of the names and at the very end, Ajuin's name is called once again. To Ajuin's surprise, Coach Kataoka decides to give him his own jersey number after all. The opening ceremonies for the Tokyo tournament take place, and it is announced that only 2 schools, the ones who make it all the way to the championship game, will earn the chance to advance to the national tournament. After the ceremony ends, Sidu returns to their own practice facility to prepare, and while Furuya and Ajuin quickly get used to the fielding drills, Kawakami clearly struggles to keep up. Seeing this, Coach Kataoka realizes it is the right time to lift Kawakami's spirits, so he pulls him aside and tells him with confidence that he will serve as their ace closer, meaning he does not have to worry about starting games and can instead focus on finishing strong. Afterward, the game between Sidu and Maimon begins and Sidu takes the first turn at batting. Kuramochi steps up to the plate as the leadoff batter, but instead of facing Maimon's southpaw ace, he is surprised to see that their starting pitcher is actually a submarine pitcher named Mamoru. From the dugout, Chris explains to the others that Mamoru must have spent the past 2 years perfecting this unique pitching style before finally getting here, which makes him especially tricky to deal with. Standing in the batter's box, Kuramochi immediately notices how Mamoru's form is even lower than Kawakami's and how the ball rises upward before dropping down sharply. Kuramochi struggles and after 2 more pitches, he ends up striking out. Following him, Ryosuke walks to the plate for his at-bat and before he swings, Coach Kataoka gives him a clear signal to focus closely on Mamoru's pitches rather than trying to swing recklessly. Ryosuke steps up and hits a sharp line toward third base, but the fielder is ready and catches it, so he is out right away. Then Isashiki comes up and swings at the very first pitch, but he misses completely, and on the next pitch he lifts the ball into the air and it is caught in center field. With that, Sidu switches to defense and Furuya goes to the mound as the starting pitcher. On the other side, Maimon's coach Chiba starts feeling like Sidu is looking down on his team and not taking them seriously, while people in the stands wonder why Tamba is not on the field. However, Chiba gives his first batter the sign to only swing if the ball is right down the middle like a big meatball. Even so, Furuya keeps throwing pitches up high and the batter swings anyway instead of waiting like he was told. In the top of the second inning, the captain Yuki is the first one to bat, and the fielders on the other team all shift their positions over to the right side. The shortstop moves to stand right over second base, while the second baseman slides close to the first baseman. After that, the 5th batter, Masuko, sends a grounder between the infielders which allows him to safely reach first base. Now Miyuki comes up to the plate with runners in scoring position, and the pressure starts to rise. The pitch comes in low and right down the middle, and Miyuki swings hard, driving the ball cleanly between first and second base. That hit lets Masuko race all the way to third, Miyuki reaches second, and Yuki makes it home to score. Watching this, Ajuin feels impressed by Miyuki's strong hit, but instead of sitting around, he chooses to stay active and calls out to Haruchi so they can play catch on the sidelines. However, Kawakami has been told to stay ready to pitch whenever he is needed, but instead Coach Kataoka makes the call for Ajuin to take the mound for the next inning. It is now a 15-run difference after 4 innings and Sidu decides to switch pitchers by sending Ajuin to the mound. When Ajuin throws the ball while warming up with Miyuki, the pitcher Hasanuma looks on and tells his teammates that Ajuin's pitches are even slower than the ones they faced from the last pitcher. Still, the players on Maimon remind themselves that if they lose here, this will end up being their very last game together, so they cannot give up easily. At that moment, Maymon's coach calls out to Hasanuma and tell him to stay aggressive and to put all of his 3 years of effort and pride into this game. When Ajuan throws his very first pitch, the ball slips and ends up hitting the batter directly in the back, which shocks everyone watching. Right after that, the players rush to the field and crowd around Ajuan, looking angry as if they were ready to scold or even beat him up for wasting their time like that. Soon after, Maymon decides to try a bunt, but the ball rolls straight back toward Ajuan on the mound. He quickly picks it up and fires it over to second base for the first out, and then the ball is thrown to first where it lands neatly in the baseman's mitt to complete a fast double play. The 5th inning starts and Haruchi swings at the first pitch, blasting it for a home run that flies over the fence. After that, the game comes to an end with Maymon losing, and their players begin to cry on the field. Even so, they cheer for Ajuan and Sidu, hoping they can keep winning and make it to nationals. That evening, Ray and the coach stand by and watch the boys as they practice hard for the next match. The following day, some girls look at Furuya and Haruchi because they think they are handsome, but they don't pay much attention to Ajuan. Later, Tamba finally returns to the field, where he throws lightly with Miyuki as practice. Out on the field, Furuya is running laps, while Ajuan is throwing into the net, and both Ray and Chris are watching him. Ray asks Chris if he was the one who taught Ajuan how to grip the ball, and Chris says yes, he showed him the basic grip. A little after, Furuya finishes running and tells Chris he is done, but Chris suggests he should also run before games, which shocks Furuya. When the 3rd round of the tournament comes, Sidu plays Murata East and Furuya is the starting pitcher again. Against Murata East, Sidu takes control early and is already up by 8 runs after just 4 innings. From the stands, a boy named Shun is watching closely and a teammate sitting next to him asks if he is going to stop paying attention to the game since the outcome already looks decided. Shun answers that it is easy to figure out a pitcher who only relies on throwing fast balls. After the inning ends, Furuya is seen practicing with Miyuki, while Ajuan is throwing the ball back and forth with Haruchi. Later, Yuki steps up to the plate and smashes a home run, and with that hit the game ends in only 5 innings. After this, everyone goes to watch the next match and sees Kikukawa's pitcher, Shunshin Young. Miyuki gathers Ajuan and Furuya and tells them to carefully watch Shunshin, pointing out that his pitching stands out because he has amazing control, which is the very skill the freshman pitchers on Sidu's team are still missing. Akikawa takes the win, and right after that Sidu's practice begins again with the players working hard. The team studies Shunshin's pitching form and style, and Chris points out that Shunshin probably will never throw a ball straight down the middle of the plate. Kataoka gathers the players and tells them clearly that they cannot afford to hesitate when swinging, and that in order to pressure the pitcher they will have to rely on bunts and speed. Soon, reporters and media groups crowd around, watching Sidu's players train and especially coming to take a look at Furuya. On the side, Ajuan is practicing with Chris while Kanemaru steps into bat against him. Kawakami is working with Mayachi, and Tamba is throwing the ball into the net with Coach Kataoka observing him. During all this, Furuya is nowhere to be found, and Owada wonders out loud where he could have gone. Miyuki eventually spots Furuya lying down and taking a nap, and he looks unhappy about it. Miyuki wakes him up and orders the freshman and throws him. A little later, though, Miyuki realizes that Furuya might not be used to the hot temperature since he just moved from Hokkaido, which makes this his very first summer in Tokyo. After practice, the coach tells the whole team that they should only do light warm-ups and be ready to enter the stadium by 8 a.m., reminding them that it is going to be very hot tomorrow, so they need to get plenty of rest tonight. After hearing this, everyone heads off in their own direction to do individual practice, but Miyuki asks Furuya to meet him later and practice again after the sun goes down. At the same time, Ray mentions that Furuya probably will not be able to handle the intense heat in tomorrow's game, but the coach responds firmly, saying that excuses like that are not acceptable for their team. Right after, he quietly tells Kawakami to be ready to pitch as early as the first inning if needed. Later that night, Haruchi and his older brother Ryosuke work together, practicing their batting and other techniques, while Ajuan continues practicing his pitching with Chris. Just then, the coach arrives at the field and asks Chris if it is not too late to still be practicing, but instead of stopping them, he grabs a helmet and a bat himself. The coach tells Ajuan to step up and show the strength of his pitching. The next day, everyone gathers at the stadium ready for the big match, and the weather turns out to be even hotter than the day before. Before the game starts, the coach reminds all the players not to forget their signs and signals, and he also tells both Ajuan and Kawakami to be prepared to go in at any moment. On the other side, Akikawa's players look frustrated and jealous when they see all the girls in the stands cheering loudly for Sidu instead of supporting them once the game begins. Even though Akikawa had practiced hitting pitches at high speed, the first batter is still caught off guard by Furuya's fastball up high. However, Furuya ends up walking the batter without him even swinging once. Watching closely, Miyuki notices that the batters are not choking up or holding their bats short despite facing Furuya's fastball, and he quickly realizes that their strategy is to avoid swinging at his pitches altogether. Miyuki begins calling for the splitter, and once he does, Furuya starts throwing strikes instead of missing like before, even after walking the first 2 batters. With just 4 pitches, Furuya strikes out the 3rd batter and gets his rhythm back. Next, Akikawa's 4th batter steps up to the plate and looks over toward the dugout to see the sign from his coach. Coach Ogata signals for him to stay patient and keep the inning alive by waiting instead of swinging right away. After that strikeout, another batter from Akikawa steps in because Furuya has just struck out the 4th batter with incredible pitching, and this makes Ajuin think to himself that Furuya has somehow healed instantly. Then the key player of Akikawa, Shunshin, comes up to bat. Before swinging, Shunshin speaks to Miyuki, pointing out that Miyuki only called for the splitter to loosen Furuya up, and then he adds a jab by saying it must be tough catching for a pitcher who is stupid. Miyuki disagrees with him right away and answers that he isn't afraid of a team that refuses to swing. Shunshin takes his stance and swings at Furuya's high fastball and misses. Furuya then throws a ball outside the zone, and Miyuki quickly notices that his pitcher has tightened up again because of the heavy pressure Shunshin is putting on him. The team cheers for Furuya and he throws the next pitch, but the ball doesn't drop. Akikawa takes the chance and scores 2 runs, but Furuya looks lost and he still strikes out Akikawa's 6th batter. When he comes back, Tamba gives him a drink and tells him that what matters is what he does after getting hit. In the bottom of the first, Kuramochi thinks about how they can pressure Shunshin. He tries to bunt but doesn't make it to base. Ryosuke is the 2nd batter and in his mind, he admits Shunshin plays well. But then, Shunshin makes very small changes in the catcher spot and with that, he strikes out Ryosuke, who thinks the last pitch is a ball, but the umpire calls it a strike. Top of the 3rd, Furuya strikes out Akikawa's batters. In the bottom, he goes up to bat but strikes out himself. Kuramochi comes next but once again fails to get on base. Ryosuke hits Shunshin's breaking ball but it goes straight into Shunshin's glove. Seeing that, Akikawa's coach thinks that Sidu's batters can't do a thing against Shunshin's pitching. On the other hand, Ajuin tells Furuya to switch with him because it is getting hot, but he just ignores him and walks to the field. Meanwhile, Chris and the coach see the heat rising and worry it will be tough for Furuya to keep pitching. Akikawa starts with their 7th batter and Miyuki just hopes Furuya doesn't push too hard now. The batter shows bunt but pulls back, and Miyuki realizes they're trying to wear Furuya down with fake bunts. Shunshin thinks that a small nation must use any tactic to beat a larger one, and the quicker Sidu switches pitchers, the better for Akikawa. From the dugout, Ajuin yells at Furuya not to get shaken by bunts, but Kawakami reminds him Kokudukan once did the same to him. Afterward, the coach says that if Furuya gives up another run, he'll switch him with Ajuin. Kataoka explains he doesn't want Furuya's weakness exposed with Ikadai watching, and it's too early to use Kawakami. Haruchi goes to tell Ajuin. On the mound, Furuya strikes out the first 2 batters with pure force but tires himself out even more. He then walks the 3rd batter and Kataoka calls for a change. Ajuin steps up and asks for the ball, but Furuya doesn't move. Miyuki warns him that if he keeps pitching, he'll only drag the team down. Ajuin asks again, telling Furuya to leave the rest to him. This time, Furuya hands over the ball, and the team understands his frustration. Later, it's revealed that when Kataoka challenged Ajuin the night before, the senpais were watching. When Ajuin makes his first throw of the game, the ball goes way too high toward the first baseman and almost becomes a big mistake that would have let the runner on first base advance all the way to second base. However, Yuki reacts really quickly and jumps up high to catch the ball before it can cause any problems for the team. After that play, Miyuki decides to call for a four-seam fastball thrown to the inside part of the plate, and this ends up being exactly the same type of pitch that Ajuin threw to Coach Kataoka during practice earlier, which was the pitch that barely missed hitting Kataoka right in the chest. The batter ends up hitting a shot that goes toward the third baseman, and the third baseman catches it easily to get the batter out. Afterward, Ajuin takes the mound for pitching, and because of the speed and strength of his fastballs, the Akikawa players start to have a hard time keeping up against him and find themselves struggling at the plate. Ajuin then manages to strike out a batter in only 3 pitches, which makes everyone watching surprised and excited since they didn't expect it to happen so quickly. After that, it becomes Shunshin's turn to pitch for Akikawa, and Isashiki is the first batter to step up against him. Shunshin and his catcher try to push him back with a pitch that is high and inside, but Isashiki connects with it and sends the ball flying far down the left field line. Right after that, Yuki comes up next to bat and his very first swing sends the ball foul as it flies past first base. Shunshin feels shaken from the earlier hit and it shows when he ends up walking Yuki and letting him take a free base. Then Masuko comes in with a bunt, laying it down perfectly to advance the runners forward. Afterward, it's Miyuki's turn and Akikawa brings all the players close to the mound as they don't want Miyuki to score anyhow. When Shunshin throws the ball, it gets a strike because Miyuki doesn't hit, and in second ball Miyuki hits and observes the balls. With the fourth pitch, Miyuki perfectly predicts what Shunshin would pitch and brings 2 runners home while he reaches third base. Afterward, another batter goes against Shunshin, but he does a bunt and Miyuki quickly runs to the base but gets out. Afterward, it's Sidu's turn to pitch and Ajuin goes first, and because of his fast pitching they can't even hit his balls. Ajuin manages to get 2 outs quickly, and when another batter comes and hits the ball, someone catches it and he gets out Oswell. Afterward, it becomes Akikawa's turn to bat, and when Ajuin steps up to pitch, the first batter goes down swinging as he strikes out. Kuramochi comes next to the plate, and even though he tries hard to make contact, he also ends up striking out. Ryosuke follows after that and battles by hitting several foul balls to stay alive, but in the end, he too strikes out and the inning ends. At the top of the 6th inning, Shunshin comes up to bat, but Ajuin jams him with a tough pitch that forces a weak pop fly straight into the infield where it is easily caught. Back in the dugout, Coach Kataoka begins giving instructions, telling Haruchi to start warming up and sending Tamba to head over to the field so he can begin throwing in preparation. Afterward, Shunshin strikes out another batter with a strong pitch, and Ajuin also keeps striking out the Akikawa players one after another, so the game stays tied with neither side gaining the lead. When it reaches the bottom of the 6th inning with 2 outs already recorded, Sidu has a chance to score, but Shunshin gets the next batter out and shuts down their opportunity. However, Sidu ends up not scoring in that inning, yet Akikawa also fails to put any runs on the board when they come up to bat at the top of the 7th. The crowd is impressed with the battle on the mound and cheers loudly, while Chris and the coach both praise Ajuin for the way he is holding strong against the pressure. Kataoka then speaks to his team and tells his players that they must focus on getting as many runs as they can before the game comes to an end. When the bottom of the 7th inning begins, Haruchi is sent in as a pinch hitter to bat in place of Sakai, giving Sidu another chance to change the game. On the very first pitch he sees, Haruchi swings and sends a grounder rolling between the shortstop and the third baseman, and the ball goes out into left field, letting him safely get on base. Ajuin comes up next, clearly eager to try and get a hit of his own, but Coach Kataoka calls for a bunt instead, and Ajuin lays it down, which allows Haruchi to advance to second. Now there is 1 out with a runner on second and Kuramochi steps up to the plate once again. This time he finally connects, and using his incredible speed, he sprints down the line and reaches first thanks to an error made by the second baseman. With runners on, Ryosuke is next to bat, and as Kuramochi takes his lead he steals second, while Shunshin chooses to let him go. Ryosuke then pulls off a squeeze play, and both Haruchi and Kuramochi race home to score, while he himself manages to make it all the way to second base. After that, Sidu's cleanup hitters keep the momentum going by following up and adding 3 more runs, giving their team a huge push forward. At the top of the 9th inning, Kawakami takes the mound to pitch and Shunshin is already standing on second base, trying to give his team one last chance. Miyuki signals for a slider to the outside corner, and when Kawakami throws it, the batter swings and misses, striking out on the pitch. Right away, Sidu begins to celebrate their victory with cheers and smiles, while the players from Akikawa can't hold back their tears after coming so far. Afterward, Haruchi tells Ajuin that he was great earlier, but Ajuin says that he had to push with his will because they were down by running. However, Miyuki just makes fun of Ajuin and says that his pitches weren't good enough. He also tells Furuya that he lacks today and he has a lot of reflection to do today. Afterward, everyone tries to leave the field. Ikadai team congratulates Team Sidu while Ajuin says that there is no time for congratulations. Afterward, they all stay to watch game of Yakushi High School against Ikadai. In the first inning, Ikadai score 3 runs in quick succession with a home run by their cleanup hitter, captain, and third baseman Omi. Miyuki compares the strength of Ikadai's batting lineup with Sidu's, and his words shock the freshman pitchers who can't believe how tough the team really is. Ikadai's next batter manages to connect and hit the ball, but it is caught cleanly by Yakushi's third baseman, Raichi. However, when Raichi makes the throw across the field, he makes a mistake, and the first baseman is unable to catch it, letting the runner stay safe. Even after that, Ikadai shows strong confidence, saying that they are going to win and that no matter what tricks the other team might try to pull, it will never be enough to match their baseball. At this point it is also revealed that Monica, the ace pitcher of Ikadai, and Tamba actually grew up together, and before parting ways back in junior high, the two of them made a promise that they would each become the ace of their own team and one day face off against each other at Koshien. By the end of the top of the first inning, Ikadai already scored a total of 6 runs, giving them a big lead early on. As the match goes on, Raichi steps up and blasts a 2-run homer that shocks everyone watching. After giving up that home run, Monica completely loses his rhythm, allowing Yakushi to score a total of 4 runs in the very first inning, and he is then pulled from the mound and sent to the outfield so he can try to calm himself down. By the time the game reaches the bottom of the 6th inning, Ikadai is still holding the lead. Meanwhile, Raichi ends up arguing with the coach about the way things are going, and it is revealed that the coach is actually his own father, Reizu. Yakushi manages to score another run soon after, but Ikadai responds quickly by pulling off a sharp double play. Raichi steps back into the batter's box for his second showdown against Monica, and the crowd watches closely, knowing this at-bat could change the flow of the game. Monica starts off strong, throwing a few good pitches that make it seem like he has the upper hand this time. When he faces Raichi again, he delivers 2 low breaking balls in a row, and Raichi swings hard at both but misses, leaving him behind in the count. For the third pitch, Monica chooses a fastball right down the middle, and Raichi makes contact, sending the ball screaming straight back toward the mound. The hit knocks Monica down, but he quickly grabs the ball while on the ground and throws to first, managing to get Raichi out just in time. Right after the play, though, Monica is pulled from the game with an injury to his left arm, leaving his teammates worried. On the other hand, Narumiya receives praise from everyone for his sharp pitching performance, yet he remains frustrated and upset, because even with all the compliments he still couldn't stay on the mound to pitch until the very end of the game. Harada speaks up to remind Narumiya that there are only a few games left before nationals begin, and if they end up losing even once, their chance to go will be completely over. Just then, someone arrives and delivers surprising news that Ikadai Third High has lost their game against Yakushi. After that match, Sidu's freshman team are left wandering around looking for their bus, and during that time they spot Todoroki Raichi practicing his swings while his father, Reizu, watches him carefully. Reizu then tells Raichi that the only pitcher left in West Tokyo who is actually worth his time is Narumiya Mei from Inashiro, and this remark stuns Furuya, Eijuan, and Haruchi, who all happen to overhear it. Back at Sidu, both Eijuan and Furuya take to the field with renewed motivation, running hard as they push themselves to improve. Haruchi shares with the rest of the team what Raichi and Reizu were talking about, and the whole group becomes fired up for the important match ahead. After that, Chris teaches everyone about Yakuchi's players and how they play. He says their right-handed pitcher pitched the last 2 innings against Ikadai and throws a shoot ball that goes right at a batter's chest, and his name is Shunpei Sanada. At the same time, Team Yakuchi trains at night and journalists watch them and notice they haven't been bunted in any game but now practice bunts. A journalist interviews Sanada briefly and learns he teaches kids baseball by the river after stopping playing. He also taught Raichi since he was small, giving him a wooden bat for practice. Raichi later learns image training, imagining hitting different pitches from different pitchers. Meanwhile, Yakushi's first-year cleanup hitters watch videos of Sidu's pitchers like they did with Ikadaizen. Sanada asks Raichi about Sidu's pitchers. Raichi laughs because he finds Furuya and Eijuan's pitches interesting. At Sidu, pitchers practice throwing. Eijuan works with Chris, Furuya with Miyuki, and Kawakami with Ono. Tamba works with Mayachi. Later, Kataoka announced the starting pitcher against Yakushi will be Furuya, then Eijuan in the 4th and Kawakami in the 7th. For Tamba, Kataoka says he can't put him on the mound right now. On the field, Sidu's batters practice with Tamba to help him get back to form. Yuki asks if he wants to stop, but Tamba asks for one more round. However, Kataoka comes with Rei and Miyuki, telling everyone to rest. Kataoka asks if Tamba still isn't satisfied with himself, but Tamba doesn't answer. Afterward, Coach Kataoka tells Tamba to warm up by the 5th inning because he'll be needed if the game becomes a brawl. Kataoka offers to help Tamba stretch and his teammates tease him. It's quarterfinal day and Yakushi changes their batting order, putting Todoroki Raichi as leadoff batter. Miyuki reminds the freshman pitchers to think about connecting to the next batter. At lineup, Sidu players glare at Raichi, making Mishima wonder if he did something wrong, but Raichi laughs it off and the game starts. At the start of the 1st inning, Furuya throws a high fastball that really impresses Raichi with its speed. The second pitch becomes a low forkball, but it misses the strike zone and gets called a ball. Raichi stays calm and doesn't move his bat at all during these pitches. Raichi contacts the third pitch and sends the baseball flying straight toward the wall in right center field. Raichi runs fast and makes it safely to second base. The next batter for Yakushi happens to be another freshman player named Akiba, who swings at Furuya's splitter pitch but completely misses it. Coach Reizu smiles in the dugout because the team's real plan involves only trying to hit Furuya's fastball pitches. Akiba connects with the next high fastball, and this hit allows Raichi to run all the way back home to score. It gets revealed that Coach Reizu put Raichi at the top of the batting order so that Furuya would have to pitch from the stretch position if Raichi got on base. All of Sidu's infield players meet together on the pitcher's mound. Miyuki tells Furuya that he'll focus the game plan around using the splitter pitch, but his fastball will still be his most powerful weapon. He reminds his younger teammates that he has reliable teammates playing defense behind him. The third batter hits a foul ball during his at-bat. For the second pitch of this at-bat, Furuya decides to throw a splitter. Miyuki sees that a stolen base attempt is coming and positions his glove low enough to catch the ball quickly. He makes a sharp throw to Kuramochi at second base, getting Akiba out on the steal attempt. He then tells a surprised Furuya that he has another reliable senior teammate in front of him. Ajuin watches with amazement and gets startled when the crowd starts cheering loudly. During the bottom of the first inning, Sidu manages to score 1 run. Yuki hits a line drive directly to Raichi for an out, and while Coach Reizu thinks they need to be careful about Miyuki's upcoming at-bat, Masuko surprises everyone by hitting a 2-run home run. Miyuki, batting 6th in the order, hits the ball straight back to the pitcher for an easy out. He still struggles to get hits when there are no runners on base. At the top of the second inning, Coach Reizu decides to follow Akikawa's strategy to shut down Furuya's effectiveness. Miyuki realizes what's happening and calls for Furuya to have better control of his pitches. Furuya throws from the stretch position and gets a strike. The next ball gets hit toward first base and Furuya runs over to cover the bag while Yuki fields the ball. Furuya gets the next batter out, and Coach Reizu thinks about breaking Furuya's confidence during Reichi's second at-bat. Afterwards, Furuya gets his turn to bat for Sidu and he immediately hits a home run that completely surprises everyone in the crowd. Coach Kataoka informs both Furuya and Miyuki that the pitching change will happen earlier than originally planned. However, the switch will take place after Furuya faces Yakushi's 8th and 9th batters, and then Furuya will move to left field to replace Sakai. Sakai hands Furuya his outfielder's glove to use, and at the top of the third inning, Ajuin takes Furuya's place on the mound after Furuya strikes out both the 8th and 9th batters. Ajuin stands on the pitcher's mound and prepares to face the top of Yakushi's batting lineup. Ajuin yells out whatever thoughts come to his mind, which really impresses Raichi with his energy. However, Coach Reizu wonders why the Akikawa batters couldn't hit Ajuin's pitches, and he correctly guesses that the pitch must be a moving fastball. At the same time, Sanka's senior players spend time playing games at an arcade, thinking that it should be their team facing Sidu in this game, not Yakushi. Omi suggests that they should go watch the actual match to see how good Yakushi really plays and how Sidu performs against them. Back in the ongoing game, Miyuki calls for a ball on the first pitch because he wants to see how Raichi will react to it. Ajuin doesn't want Raichi to get a hit, so he throws a strike that goes just inside the strike zone. Raichi manages to figure out what type of pitch it is and stays completely calm. However, Miyuki feels unhappy with Ajuin for not following his signals and throws the ball back to Ajuin as hard as he possibly can. Ajuin gets the message that Miyuki is sending and begins pitching exactly where Miyuki's mitt is positioned. Raichi watches another pitch carefully and thinks that Ajuin has real potential as a pitcher. On the third pitch of the at-bat, Raichi makes contact and hits a foul ball down the third baseline. The count becomes 2 balls and 1 strike. The fourth pitch is an inside fastball that Raichi pops up straight toward Ajuin on the mound. Ryosuke, Kuramochi, and Masuko all run toward the pitcher's mound just in case Ajuin doesn't catch the ball, but Ajuin successfully makes the catch himself. Coach Reizu feels very unhappy with this result and calls for Sanada, who has already left the dugout and is ready to enter the game. During the bottom of the third inning, with Ryosuke standing on second base, Yuki hits a baseball deep into the outfield area. Sidu scores another run and now Yakushi trails by 4 runs. Coach Reizu decides to make a pitcher substitution and replaces Mino with Sanada on the mound. After that, Sanada steps onto the pitcher's mound and Masuko stands in the batter's box, but Miyuki waits on deck while studying Sanada's pitching approach. Sanada's first pitch becomes a shoot ball that catches everyone's attention. Then Miyuki comes up batting with runners now on the corners of the diamond. He patiently waits for a pitch he can drive, believes he spots one, but the baseball breaks at the last second and he hits into a double play that completely kills the rally. Kataoka asks what type of pitch that was, but Miyuki figures out on his own that it must be a cutter. The Sanku senior players arrive at the stadium and right away notice that Tamba isn't anywhere on the field. The fourth inning bottom half sees Furuya stepping up to the plate but going down swinging at the pitches. Chris acknowledges Sanada's pitching ability but wonders why he's been working as a reliever throughout the entire tournament. Ajuan also comes to bat but strikes out terribly at home plate. During the fifth inning, both Ajuan and Sanada continued striking out opposing hitters with great efficiency. Tamba walks over to the pitcher's mound to tell Kawakami to maintain his focus since the first-year players have proven they deserve their roster spots. The sixth inning top half begins with Yakushi's eighth batter stepping up to the plate, and Coach Reizu's instructions are straightforward: get a base runner on for Reichi's upcoming at-bat. Ajuan throws his pitch before the batter gets completely ready, which results in a pop-up that both Ryosuke and Yuki mishandle badly, allowing a man to reach base safely, and then a sacrifice bunt successfully moves him to second base. Afterward, all the players wait patiently for Coach Kataoka's strategic orders. Haruchi walks over to the pitcher's mound to inform Ajuan that he gets to remain pitching in the game. However, Ajuan prepares to face Reichi, who stands in the batter's box waiting for one specific type of pitch. Ajuan delivers his pitch and Reichi swings his bat with full power, sending the baseball just over the left field fence for a home run that brings in 2 important runs. Miyuki immediately apologizes to Ajuan for calling the wrong pitch, but Ajuan appears completely shaken by what just happened. Coach Reizu grins from the dugout because he notices that Ajuan has clearly lost all his energy and confidence. Even though Sidu still leads by 2 runs, Ajuan has completely lost his pitching rhythm and effectiveness. Coach Kataoka decides to make a pitching change by replacing Ajuan with Kawakami on the mound. Yakushi manages to score yet another run, which gets their fans and supporters in the audience cheering loudly for them. Kawakami allows a hardline drive toward the third baseline, but Masuko makes an incredible diving catch and then quickly throws out the runner who was trying to advance from third base. All of Kawakami's teammates gather around to encourage and support him, while Tamba continues his warm-up routine by throwing pitches at the field. Afterward, Yuki hits a long fly ball that sails into left field, putting Sidu back up by 2 runs once again. Chris figures out that Sanada probably struggles with endurance issues that prevent him from starting games as a pitcher. Yakushi's players gather around Sanada showing genuine concern for his condition, but Sanada quickly reassures them and eases their worries with his positive attitude. Ajuan watches Sanada carefully, remembering the advice that Chris had given him about how to handle situations after giving up a home run. It turns out that Sanada injured his left calf muscle last spring and the injury still hasn't completely healed even now. Even with this physical limitation, he continues giving his absolute best effort for his team, and Coach Reizu understands exactly how important Sanada's presence is to Yakushi's success. Reizu tells all his players that they need to turn this game around during the 8th inning. At the top of the 8th inning, Reichi draws a walk from Kawakami's pitching. The next batter, Akaba, initially shows bunt, but then Reichi attempts to steal second base, causing Akaba to pull back and swing for a hit instead. The baseball moves unexpectedly and the batter completely misses it, but Miyuki ends up being just a little too slow getting the ball down to second base. Reichi barely manages to make it safely to second base. Akaba pulls the third pitch with great force and Reichi successfully advances to third base. The third batter in the lineup is Mishima, creating a situation with 1 out and a dangerous runner positioned on third base. Ajuan's typical enthusiasm returns and he starts cheering loudly for Kawakami from the dugout. The first 2 pitches result in foul balls and the batter quickly finds himself in a difficult position. Miyuki calls for a low slider pitch, but Mishima manages to hit an RBI single into center field. Reichi crosses home plate and now Sidu leads by only 1 run with Yakushi's cleanup hitter and team captain coming to the plate. He makes contact with the very first pitch and Isashiki dives desperately for the long fly ball but arrives just a little too late to pick off the batter at first base. The 5th batter in the order gets a hit that goes past first base into shallow right field territory, and Mishima takes advantage by advancing to third base. With 2 outs recorded and runners now on both first and third base, the 6th batter Sanada steps up to the plate. Recognizing that this moment could be the crucial turning point of the entire game, Coach Kataoka decides to call for a pitcher substitution. Afterward, Tamba heads to the mound as the announcement is made that Sidu is making a change, with Tamba coming in to replace Kawakami. Right away, Kawakami starts apologizing to him, feeling like he has let the team down, but Tamba stops him and explains that watching the way he, Furuya, and Ajuan have all been pitching up to this point has actually given him more confidence. Tamba then tells Kawakami to put his trust in him, promising that he will carry forward all of their determination and fighting spirit in this game. With that, Kawakami hands over the baseball to Tamba and slowly walks off the mound, leaving everything in his teammates' hands. However, Tamba faces a tough situation with runners already on first and third base, and Yakushi's ace pitcher batting sixth comes to the plate. Miyuki gives a warning that Yakushi's hitters tend to swing at the very first pitch, so they must be extra cautious with that opening throw. Miyuki signals for a fastball on this crucial first pitch. His goal is simply to intimidate the batter, regardless of whether it's a strike or ball. Miyuki calls for a fastball on the outside corner, but Tamba throws it inside instead, and the pitch goes behind the batter for a foul ball. After 2 pitches, Sanada finds himself in trouble at the plate. The third pitch is a curveball that goes completely wild. Miyuki barely manages to block it with his right hand, preventing the runner on third from advancing. The fourth pitch appears to be heading straight for the pitcher's head, but it curves inside and catches Sanada looking for a strikeout. During the bottom of the 8th inning, Sidhu's hitters go on an aggressive attack and extend their lead to 3 runs. The inning concludes when Furuya hits into a double play. To reduce the chance of defensive mistakes, Kataoka substitutes Furuya with Kadota in the outfield. The upcoming batters for Yakushi are their 7th, 8th, and 9th hitters, and Reizu's strategy involves getting some runners on base so Raichi can come up with a chance to completely change the game's momentum. Afterward, the game keeps going with Yakushi behind by 3 runs, and Kuramochi makes a great play by striking out another Yakushi batter after catching the ball cleanly, which gets the crowd excited. Everyone begins cheering loudly for Tamba as another Yakushi hitter steps up to the plate. Tamba delivers his next pitch and the ball is hit toward Masuko at third base, but it takes an irregular bounce to the left, making it tough to handle, and the runner just barely beats the throw to reach first safely. Even so, Miyuki thinks that Tamba should face Raichi head-on, believing that shutting him down completely is the only way to stop Yakushi. Watching from the stands, Monica thinks to himself that Tamba should not try to go against Raichi directly, since it could be too risky. The first pitch Tamba throws ends up being a ball as Raichi holds his swing and doesn't go after it. When Tamba throws the second pitch, Raichi again doesn't swing and it is called a ball as well. The next pitch Tamba throws comes out looking weak and heading straight down the middle, and Raichi gets ready to crush it out of the park, but at the last second the ball sails just foul, keeping the game alive. Tamba follows with another pitch and this one is hit foul as well, putting Raichi in a corner with no room to miss. With the count now at 2-2, Miyuki signals for a forkball, trusting Tamba to finish it here. Tamba grips the ball and delivers, and when Raichi swings, he completely whiffs, ending the game with Sidhu taking the win. From the stands, Owada notices how sluggish Raichi's final swing looked, and journalist explains that Raichi probably couldn't handle the heavy pressure of that situation. Raichi is usually the type of batter who enjoys one-on-one duels with pitchers, but in that last inning he was swinging not just for himself but for his whole team. Later, outside the stadium, the Yakushi players gather together and Raichi is still crying from the loss. The seniors thank Reizu for everything he did in teaching them baseball, and then they turn to Raichi, telling him that they will be waiting for the day when everyone finally gets to know his name. That evening, Chris conducts another tutoring session for everyone to prepare for their upcoming match against Sunsun High School. During the discussion, everyone talks about Sunsun's exceptionally tall player who has served as their ace pitcher since his first year, and his name is Yusuke Maki. Coach Kataoka announces that Tamba will be the starting pitcher for tomorrow's important game. He also tells Ajuan to stay prepared to play at any moment, which surprises Ajuan since he expected not to play after allowing Raichi to score that crucial run. Kataoka adds that he wants Furuya to get proper rest because he's become fatigued from pitching continuously in recent games. After the team meeting ends, Miyuki and Chris hold a detailed game review session with pitchers Ajuan, a clearly sulking Furuya, and Kawakami, who volunteered to participate in the discussion. Ajuan asks why he's being given another opportunity to play, and Miyuki explains that the coach really appreciates his never-give-up attitude and spirit. Chris then explains to Furuya that resting properly is actually an important part of any pitcher's responsibilities. With Ajuan, Furuya, Tamba, and Kawakami available, the coach plans to have them rotate and play throughout the entire summer tournament. At Sunsun High School, sports journalists Mine and Owada arrive to interview Coach Agai, who tends to mumble most of his responses to their questions. The experienced veteran coach criticizes Kataoka by saying he trusts his players way too much, and he believes the younger coach made several questionable strategic decisions during the quarterfinal game against Yakushi. At the field area, Maki practices his pitching mechanics and then asks one of his teammates why he chose to enroll at Sunsun instead of prestigious schools like Ikadai or Sidhu. His teammate honestly answers that he never received recruitment invitations from those elite baseball programs. Maki admits that he also really wanted to attend Sidu High School but feels frustrated and disappointed that he never got invited to join their program. Back at Sidu, all the players participate in a special practice session where Coach Kataoka actually takes the mound to pitch, which was arranged and prepared by the dedicated third-year students. The following morning, Haruchi and his older brother Ryosuke have a private conversation together. Haruchi expresses his strong desire to go to Koshien tournament alongside Ryosuke, but Ryosuke tells him he feels concerned because Haruchi might not make it onto the Koshien roster since only 18 players will be selected for the team. After everyone finishes eating breakfast together, all the players head out toward the stadium for their game. Afterward, the match begins and during the bottom of the third inning, Sensen manages to score 1 run, but Sidu gets their chance to respond when they come up to bat at the top of the fourth inning. Facing a curveball, Isashiki connects solidly and sends a strong line drive toward third base, but the third baseman makes the catch for an out. Yuki also faces a curveball on his at-bat, this time managing to get it past the third baseman and reaching second base safely. During the next at-bat, Masuko executes a perfect bunt that advances Yuki to third base while he barely manages to reach first base himself. The next batter up is clutch hitter Miyuki, creating a dangerous situation with runners on first and third base. Sensen's coach decides to call for an intentional walk to Miyuki, which loads all the bases with runners. The seventh batter in Sidu's lineup hits a high fly ball into the outfield and gets out, but Yuki tags up on third base and attempts to run home. However, he gets tagged out on a perfectly executed relay throw from the outfield. By the bottom of the fifth inning, the score remains Sidu 0 and Sensen 1. Tamba's fastballs still haven't returned to their previous dominant form, but his breaking ball pitches are working effectively to record outs against Sensen's batters. At the top of the sixth inning, Ryosuke makes contact with a curveball and sends it into the outfield, safely reaching first base. Haruchi gets told to prepare himself to enter the game as a pinch hitter, while Ajuin starts getting ready to pitch since Tamba is showing signs of fatigue. Yuki reaches first base with another solid hit that moves Ryosuke all the way to third base. Masuko comes up batting with Miyuki waiting behind him in the batting order, and he hits a ground ball toward the third baseman. Ryosuke takes off from third base and slides around the catcher's tag to touch home plate safely, scoring the tying run and finally making the game tied. Meanwhile, the journalists think that Sensen puts pressure on the opponents by always making aggressive plays. However, this offensive style is how Coach Kataoka likes to play baseball as well. Afterward, Miyuki gets 4 balls in a row and then Sakai arrives at bat, but he also gets strike out. Afterward, the coach makes Tamba get substituted into the game to replace Haruchi in the 8th batting position. Afterward, Maki decides to throw a curveball. However, Haruchi makes solid contact with the curve and sends it flying deep into left field, just barely clearing the fielder's outstretched glove. All 3 base runners manage to cross home plate while Haruchi reaches second base safely with a double. During the bottom of the 6th inning, Ajuin steps onto the pitcher's mound to start his work. Inside Sensen's dugout, Maki's teammates try to encourage and support him after their coach warns that he'll be replaced if any more problems occur. Sensen appears to set up a squeeze play for their next at-bat, but it actually turns out to be a hit-and-run strategy instead. The first pitch results in a shallow fly ball to the outfield, but Ryosuke is just too short to make the defensive play and get them out. Afterward, Miyuki signals for a timeout, but Ajuin refuses to accept it and explains that this is just baseball, so allowing hits to happen is completely normal. With runners now positioned on first and third base, Sensen's next batter uses the same aggressive strategy of putting pressure on Ajuin. This batter pops up a fly ball towards second base, but Ryasuke fails to make the catch clean. Sensen successfully brings back 1 run to make the score closer. Furuya heads to the field area to warm up, which gets Ajuin even more excited and pumped up. Haruchi walks to the pitcher's mound carrying Coach Kataoka's message that Masuko's completely bald head might distract the entire team. The team is trying their best to help Ajuin feel relaxed, but Miyuki only succeeds in making him more worked up instead. Miyuki keeps pushing and challenging him because he wants to make Ajuin perform at his absolute best right after experiencing his lowest moment. After that, Ajuin steps up to pitch against Maki, who is now at the plate as a batter, and the entire crowd starts cheering loudly for Ajuin. On the very first pitch of this matchup, Maki contacts the baseball, but it becomes a foul ball that goes out of play. Ajuin feels completely shocked by how hard Maki hit that ball and becomes really nervous, which causes him to throw the next pitch far outside the strike zone. When Miyuki sees what just happened, he realizes that Maki must have tremendous power in his swing to hit the ball that far and that hard. After that wild pitch, Ajuan throws another ball that misses the strike zone again, and everyone on his team starts telling Ajuan that he needs to calm down and relax. The third pitch of the at-bat goes foul down the first baseline, and this makes Ajuan feel even more nervous and shaken up than before. When everyone sees how Ajuan is reacting, they all start getting worried about him because it's clear that he's becoming more and more frustrated with each pitch. But even with all this pressure, Miyuki decides to call for a four-seam fastball to the inside part of the plate, and the pitch goes through the strike zone safely, though something seems a little off about it. The pitch appears to go slightly too far inside, but the umpire calls it a strike anyway and Maki gets strike out. Afterward, Maki regrets the fact that he never went to Sidu High School, not because they didn't invite him but simply because he was too afraid to join such a competitive team. At the same time, Coach finally sees the major flaw in his coaching methods, which is that he doesn't give his players enough confidence to succeed. His players never face the biggest challenges and therefore never learn how to overcome them. Ajuan hands over the pitching duties to Kawakami, who successfully closes out the game without any more problems. Sidu wins the match and advances to the finals of the tournament. After that game ends, the second semi-final match between Inashiro and Sakurazawa High School starts, and everyone feels really excited to watch this important game. What makes it even more interesting is that Inashiro's number one pitcher happens to be Narumiya, and everyone wonders what kind of performance he will deliver today. Right at that moment, Team Sidu also shows up to watch the match, and they all think that Narumiya represents a very special opponent for their team. The sports journalists explain that Sakurazawa is the only public school that made it this far in the tournament because in previous years they never managed to get past their first game. Sakurazawa's head coach remembers that his school used to have a terrible 20-year consecutive losing streak with 0 wins until 3 talented players named Inamoto Masaaki, Hidekoro Yoshimi, and Nagao Akira finally arrived at the school. Once the actual match gets underway, Inashiro's batters find themselves having a really difficult time trying to hit Akira Nagao's pitches, which confuses both Ajuan and Furuya because the pitches look surprisingly slow. Both Chris and Miyuki quickly notice that the pitch Akira is throwing happens to be a knuckleball. When Inashiro takes the field on defense, Narumiya returns the favor by similarly striking out all of Sakurazawa's batters with his own pitching skills. During the top of the second inning, Harada comes up to bat and manages to contact the knuckleball, but because the ball moves in a completely different direction than expected, it doesn't travel very far and he fails to reach base safely. However, Narumiya steps up to bat next and announces that he will get revenge for Harada, which really annoys his teammate. At the plate, Narumiya gets slightly frustrated when he sees how calm Akira looks on the pitcher's mound, and even though Coach Kunitomo had instructed Narumiya to take compact swings, Narumiya completely misses the pitch for a strikeout. The Sakurazawa players and fans cheer loudly for this result, but Narumiya immediately silences them again with his own dominant pitching performance while thinking to himself that he absolutely will not lose any kind of pitching duel. After that, Narumiya's pitching ability completely surprises everyone who is watching the game, and his combination of fastballs and changeups gives all of Sakurazawa's batters an extremely difficult time. During the next part of the inning, Akira successfully gets 2 outs on board, and the sports journalists comment that even with a dangerous runner positioned on third base, Akira continues to stay completely calm on the mound. When Kamiya steps into the batter's box, Akira decides to throw a curveball that crosses the plate perfectly for a called strike. On the following pitch, Kamiya manages to make contact and hits the baseball high up into the air, but Furuki positions himself correctly and catches the fly ball to record the third out. When it becomes Inashiro's turn to bat again, Narumiya once again surprises all the spectators by striking out another Sakurazawa batter with his overpowering stuff. During the top of the fourth inning, Inashiro really starts gaining serious momentum and taking control of the game. The base runner quickly steals second base without any trouble, and the next hit results in yet another defensive error made by the Sakurazawa fielders. Now there are runners positioned on both first and third base with no outs recorded. While Sakurazawa keeps making more and more costly errors throughout the game, Inashiro demonstrates their immense talent and strength as a championship-level team. When the final out is recorded, Inashiro wins the semi-final game by a completely dominant score of 11-0. Once the game officially ends, Narumiya calls out loudly to Akira and his entire team, telling them that they should go home with their heads held up high because they only lost to the absolute best team in the entire country during this summer tournament. Akira feels completely astounded when he hears these respectful words from his opponent, but he finally realizes and understands exactly why his team lost so badly. Afterward, Miyuki stands by the bathroom waiting for the 3 first years to come when a handful of Inashiro players come walking by and starts talking with Miyuki. Afterward, we got a flashback where Narumiya wanted to create an all-star team, so he asked Kanzuya to join him. However, Kanzuya doesn't accept his offer because he wants to be with Team Sidu and he chooses them. Later, all the players gather to study Narumiya's pitching mechanics from video footage of the recent Inashiro vs Sakurazawa game. Chris points out that Narumiya used his crossfire pitch very effectively during that match, and Ajuin mentions that he thinks he's heard about that particular pitch somewhere before. Miyuki tells Ajuin that he actually threw that same pitch during their game against Sunsen High School, which completely surprises Ajuin. Ryosuke asks for Yuki's opinion about Narumiya's pitching style, since he's the only current player who managed to get hits off Narumiya's pitches last year. Yuki responds by saying they have two strong leadoff batters who can disrupt any opponent's rhythm, plus other batters who can adapt quickly to different game situations. He confidently tells all his teammates that they definitely can defeat Narumiya this year, which really raises the entire team's spirit. After this discussion, Tamba approaches Chris and Miyuki to tell them he'd like to organize a pitchers meeting, and he asks both of them to participate. Kuramochi feels fired up and energized after hearing Yuki's inspiring speech, but then he notices that something seems wrong with Ryosuke's leg. At Inashiro High School, Harada and Narumiya spend time studying Sidu's batting lineup carefully, while Coach Kunitomo analyzes Sidu's pitcher relay strategy. During Sidu's pitchers meeting, Chris and Miyuki take charge and lead discussions with all the pitchers about different types of pitches. Tamba says that he has something important he wants to share with the entire group. Back at Inashiro, the players practice their batting skills against 4 different types of pitchers to prepare for various scenarios. Narumiya entertains sports reporters and talks about his personal goal of becoming the best pitcher in all of Japan, which clearly annoys Harada. Sports journalist Mine Fujio interviews Coach Kunitomo about why Narumiya didn't pitch in some games last autumn, wondering if it's related to Inashiro's disappointing loss at the Summer Koshien tournament. Kunitomo explains that while it's true Narumiya's pitching form completely broke down and he suffered greatly after the national tournament, he was forced to confront the harsh realities of competitive baseball. He adds that there's absolutely nothing quite like playing at the national level. At Sidu, Ajuin feels highly motivated and practices his pitching mechanics intensively with Chris as his partner. Chris thinks that Ajuin's exceptional enthusiasm must be directly related to what Tamba said during their recent pitchers meeting. Tamba had told the entire group that whoever takes the mound to pitch becomes the ace of the team at that moment. Returning to the present practice session, Chris challenges Ajuin to throw his best pitch. Ajuin asks who he should imagine as the batter and Chris responds that he should picture Inashiro's catcher Harada. Right now, Tamba stands as the only pitcher who truly deserves to wear the ace number for Sidu High School. Furuya definitely has an impressive fastball that can overpower batters, but he doesn't really have much else in his pitching arsenal beyond that one pitch. On top of that major limitation, he also struggles with stamina issues that hurt his effectiveness. Kawakami tends to be way too critical and harsh on himself, even though he actually has more pitching experience than any of the other pitchers on the team. He possesses tremendous mental strength and toughness, and that kind of mental fortitude can take a pitcher very far in competitive baseball. Ajuin's pitches are definitely difficult for batters to make solid contact with, but when they do manage to hit them, the balls tend to fly easily to the outfield for hits. Without having any other types of pitches in his current arsenal besides his moving fastball, he's probably going to lose more games than he wins once he pitches for several innings. Ajuin really wants to improve his skills and take his pitching to the next level. He desperately wants to learn how to throw a breaking ball, and just like Tamba has done, mastering that skill would make him a much more dangerous and effective pitcher. After watching Yakushi's pitcher Sanada perform during their recent game, Ajuin has become very interested in learning the cutter pitch, a ball that moves in specific directions to jam batters and force them to hit weak ground balls for easy outs. Earlier discussions mention wanting to see a pitcher who forces batters to make contact instead of always trying for strikeouts, and Ajuin seems to be developing into exactly that type of pitcher. His moving fastball is really hard for batters to figure out and time correctly, so he gets plenty of strikeouts early in games. But once opposing batters start to adjust and figure out his fastball, he could pitch for contact using his breaking ball combined with Kanzuya's excellent game-calling skills. If Ajuin successfully learns how to throw the cutter pitch, he could realistically become Sidu's ace pitcher. After finishing practice, Ajuin asks Chris if Azuma left since he wants to apologize for hitting him earlier. Chris confirms this and tells Ajuin and Nori that Azuma left some words for them. Kataoka tells Chris to have the pitchers stretch since practice is done and instructs other players to do pre-game field practice. The pitchers watch and Ajuin thinks the practice looks intense while Furuya wonders about Azuma's comment that the third years were trash before. Rei approaches them and asks if they don't believe what Azuma said. 2 springs ago, new students joined the baseball team and introduced themselves. At practice, Isashiki and Tamba worked at the field while Kataoka and Rei watched. Isashiki pitched nowhere near the strike zone while Tamba apologized constantly. Yuki, who claimed he could defend anywhere, frustrated his seniors with continuous catching errors. Mayachi was told to gain more muscle while others commented on Ryosuke's oversized pants. Chris became the first to join the first string and Azuma commented that his fellow first years were terrible and hopeless, though Chris wondered about this. After their seniors lost at the West Tokyo Tournament qualifiers, a new team formed. Rei and Kataoka told Isashiki to play outfield, surprising him. The next day during field running, Sakai collapsed. Isashiki grabbed Sakai's shoulder and reminded him he wasn't the only one struggling. Isashiki let go and Sakai stood up. That evening, Isashiki found Yuki practicing batting alone and Yuki explained he did this after every practice. Isashiki joined him. Ryosuke and Masuko showed up wanting to join too, and eventually all the others joined. During a scrimmage, Yuki hit a home run and his teammates felt overjoyed as Isashiki shouted they would follow right behind him. Back in the present, Rei tells Ajuin and Furuya that the current third year came to Sidu with strong hearts. Kataoka finishes field practice and the first string players stand together on the field, thinking they've done what they could and just need to give their all at the finals. The night before the West Tokyo Tournament finals arrives, and all the players spend time practicing their batting swings. Haruchi works on his technique alongside his older brother. Ajuin and Furuya go out to buy juice drinks for their senior teammates. Back in Miyuki's room, Ajuin wonders why his seniors are looking at his phone. Yuki explains that Kuramochi feels curious about Ajuin's girlfriend, but Ajuin quickly denies having one. The seniors take a group picture to send to Wakana's email address, who is Ajuin's childhood friend but Kuramochi believes she's Ajuin's girlfriend. Zono enters the room with 2 other club members asking Yuki to check their batting forms, only to find the third year messing around with Ajuin. Zono asks why Ajuin acts so close to the third year, but Ajuin denies it because of his current situation. Kuramochi starts wrestling with Ajuin while Yuki takes pictures of them. At Inishiro's practice grounds, Kunitomo and his assistant coach share drinks while discussing tomorrow's important game. At Sidu, Kataoka sits in his office while Rei and Uda discuss the finals with him. Rei honestly admits that their chances of winning are 60-40 favoring Inishiro. She suggests the ideal pitching strategy would be Furuya pitching for 5 innings and Tamba handling the remaining innings. Kataoka responds that it doesn't matter if they win by luck alone. He just wants to take his players to Koshien tournament. The day of the finals finally arrives and both teams feel completely pumped up for the game. Sidu will attack during the top of innings and defend during the bottom innings. Narumiya keeps yawning and Harada comments that he didn't get enough sleep, thinking it's because of what happened during last summer's Koshien tournament. Narumiya replies that he spent the night thinking of ways to crush Sidu and got too excited to fall asleep. He looks directly at Miyuki who stares back at him, and Narumiya wonders if this is the battle Miyuki truly wants. Both teams meet on the field for pre-game ceremonies. Kataoka instructs his players to wait for easy pitches and hit specific strikes. If they make Narumiya throw many pitches, even he will break down from the summer heat. The game officially begins with Kuramochi as the first batter, standing in the left batter's box which surprises Narumiya. He throws his pitch and ends up walking Kuramochi to first base. Ryosuke comes up to bat next. Narumiya throws again while Kuramochi successfully steals second base. Ryosuke executes a sacrifice bunt that advances Kuramochi to third base. Isashiki manages to hit Narumiya's slider pitch, allowing Kuramochi to run home and score the first run. When Yuki steps up to bat, Narumiya's facial expression completely changes. He throws a fastball right down the middle of the plate, surprising everyone watching. Yuki swings and misses the pitch. Miyuki wonders if Narumiya has lost his composure, and if so, this creates a great opportunity for Sidu. Afterward, Sidu has a runner on base with Yuki stepping into the batter's box. Harada signals for a change-up pitch to kill Sidu's early momentum. Narumiya delivers the pitch and Yuki takes a swing but completely misses it. Masuko makes contact with a fastball but can't reach base safely. Back in Inishiro's dugout, Harada tells Narumiya he needs to settle down. Narumiya insists he's not angry, but Harada sees right through that claim. The bottom of the first begins with Furuya taking the mound as Sidu's starting pitcher. On the mound, Ryosuke asks if he's feeling nervous and tells him to just act like he normally does. Isashiki backs up this advice. Furuya looks at both of them for a moment, then surprises everyone by bowing his head and thanking them in advance if his pitches get hit. Furuya explains this is because the third-year players have endured so much hardship. Knowing they support him lets him pitch without worry. Carlos leads off Inishiro's batting order. Furuya fires his pitch and Carlos fouls it off, claiming he swung accidentally. Miyuki doesn't buy that excuse. Furuya works against Carlos and gets him out using his splitter. Shirakawa comes up next and also goes down swinging. Carlos thinks about Furuya's fastballs being like something wild and alive. Furuya strikes out Inishiro's third batter too. During the top of the second inning, Narumiya strikes out Miyuki cleanly. Furuya steps up to bat next. Narumiya tries to intimidate him with a crossfire pitch, but Furuya fights it off foul, which clearly irritates Narumiya and throws it again and gets Furuya out. The bottom of the second has Harada struggling to time Furuya's blazing fastballs. Furuya's splitter misses the zone for a ball. He comes back with an inside fastball that freezes Harada for strike 3. Narumiya steps into the batter's box next. Over at the field, Tamba loosens up and wants to get out there. Mayachi reminds him they'll need his strength later, but besides Furuya's effectively right now. Furuya battles intensely with Narumiya, determined not to lose this matchup. Narumiya pops up to third base for an out, but Furuya finishes off Yamaoka with another strikeout. However, Ryosuke contacts Narumiya's pitch but can't reach base safely. Sidhu's offensive effort for the inning ends after just 3 batters. Now it's Sidhu's turn to play defense. Inishiro's strategy focuses on making Furuya throw as many pitches as possible to tire him out. The inning concludes with Furuya striking out the batters he faces. After 3 complete innings, Furuya's pitch count has reached 56 pitches. Afterward, Sidhu comes up to bat for their offensive turn. Isashiki makes contact but Carlos catches the ball for an out. Yuki steps up for his at-bat next, and Narumiya silences the crowd by striking Yuki out with 3 consecutive strikes. Isashiki realizes that Narumiya only goes all out when facing Yuki specifically. Masuko connects with a fastball but fails to reach base safely. During the bottom of the 4th inning, Carlos comes up to bat for Inishiro. Furuya throws 4 balls outside the strike zone and walks the batter. Shirakawa executes a sacrifice bunt and signals to his coach and Yoshizawa that Furuya's pitching speed has clearly dropped. Yoshizawa swings at the first pitch but Masuko makes an outstanding defensive save. Harada comes up to bat next. The first pitch is a splitter from Furuya. Miyuki calls for inside pitches on the following throws. Harada connects with the 4th pitch, reaches base safely and Carlos crosses home plate to score. Narumiya steps into the batter's box and makes contact and sends the ball high into right field territory. Inishiro scores another run but the defense manages to get Narumiya out. Furuya's pitch count climbs to 68, and Coach Kataoka plans to replace Furuya with Tamba starting next inning. At the top of the 5th inning, Miyuki battles against Narumiya by fouling off several pitches, but Narumiya eventually strikes him out using a fastball thrown inside. Furuya hits a long drive that allows him to reach second base safely. Afterward, batter Kadota steps up to the plate and he executes a bunt to advance Furuya to third base. Batting 9th is Shiresu, who patiently waits for a fastball to hit. The first pitch turns out to be a crossfire, followed by a ball outside the strike zone. The third pitch is the fastball Shiresu was looking for and he makes solid contact. Shirakawa chases after the ball and quickly fires it to first base. However, Tamba comes in to replace Furuya with the mound while Furuya gets moved to left field. Coach Kataoka tells Furuya that the team still needs his strength and contributions. Narumiya declares victory over Furuya with confidence. Both Sakai and Kadota wish Furuya good luck in his new position. Furuya later offers the same encouragement to Tamba as he takes over on the pitcher's mound. During the bottom of the 5th inning, Inishiro's Yamaoka comes up to bat. The first and second pitches are both curveballs from Tamba. Miyuki calls for a fastball to the outside corner, but Yamaoka connects and sends it over the fence for a home run. This rattles Tamba significantly. The next batter is Hirai, and Tamba loses his control by throwing 4 balls to walk him. Miyuki goes to the mound to talk with Tamba and try to calm him down, but Tamba still ends up walking the next batter after hitting him with a pitch. Now Inishiro has dangerous runners on first and second base with no outs recorded. However, Inishiro's 9th-hole batter Fujikawa steps up to the plate. Miyuki glances toward Coach Kataoka, but Kataoka chooses to leave the game in their hands. Miyuki allows Fujikawa to bunt, then runs after the ball and throws to third base for the out. Carlos compliments Miyuki on that defensive play and comes up to bat next. The first pitch misses for a ball and Carlos attempts to bunt the next pitch but it goes foul. Miyuki calls for a fastball inside while reminding Tamba to pitch with courage. Coach Kataoka watches Tamba and remembers a time when he scolded the young pitcher harshly. Tamba had run laps around the field wanting desperately to change himself. Later, when Tamba rested exhausted and in tears, Kataoka told him that he's a much better pitcher than he gives himself credit for, and that he needs to have more faith in his own abilities. Back in the current game, Tamba delivers his pitch and Carlos makes contact, but Masuko catches the ball for an out. Afterward, Harada explains his strategic plan to shift Sidu's attention toward the change-up pitch as they move deeper into the game. Narumiya responds by saying he'll crush anyone who gets in his way. Kuramochi steps up to bat, this time batting from the right side of the plate. The first pitch is a change-up that gets him out completely. Ajuin tries to cheer him up from the dugout. Ryosuke comes up to bat next in the lineup. Narumiya throws another change-up and Ryosuke swings and misses badly. Chris observes Inishiro's battery combination and notices they've completely changed their pitching pattern. However, Ryosuke fouls off the next pitch, then makes contact with the third but fails to reach base safely. Kuramochi starts suspecting that Ryosuke's leg is in really bad condition. He remembers confronting Ryosuke about this issue one night, and Ryosuke admitted that his leg was a little swollen from their last game. Kuramochi had doubts about this explanation, but Ryosuke assured him that he gets plenty of adrenaline rushing during games, and that everyone hides minor injuries like his. However, if Kuramochi thinks he's dragging the team down, Ryosuke won't complain if Kuramochi tells the coach since they've been battery partners for a full year. Back in the current game, Isashiki steps up to bat next. Narumiya throws his fifth changeup of the inning and Isashiki completely misses it. Chris remains puzzled because they're throwing way too many changeups, even considering that the battery changed their pattern. Isashiki battles hard and finally hits the pitch, but it goes straight into the outfield for an easy catch. Narumiya appears visibly upset and Chris wonders what's bothering him so much. During the bottom of the sixth inning, Harada reaches base safely. Narumiya comes up to bat and executes a sacrifice bunt to advance Harada into scoring position. Tamba loses control and walks the next batter he faces. The following batter makes contact and hits the ball, but Ryosuke makes a defensive save. Afterward, Soyogi hits the first pitch but Furuya quickly throws the ball back to Miyuki, which surprises the entire Inishiro team, and Fujikawa comes up to bat next and hits the ball toward the infield. Afterward, Yuki comes up to bat, desperately trying to get his first hit of the entire game. He eventually finds himself in a tough spot with 2 strikes, but on the fastball, Yuki connects and sends a deep fly ball toward center field, though Carlos makes an outstanding defensive play at the warning track to catch it for the out. Both Masuko and Miyuki also strike out during their at-bats. Sidu now has only 2 innings remaining to score some runs, but their situation looks really bad, which prompts Ajuin to shout out some encouraging words to his teammates. During the bottom of the 7th inning, after allowing a hit to Carlos and a bunt to Shirakawa, Tamba suddenly falls to his knees on the mound. Coach Kataoka immediately rushes out of the dugout to check on him. Tamba tells Kataoka that he's perfectly fine, and the Inishiro players suspect it's probably just a muscle cramp. Tamba really wants to leave the game on a high note with at least 1 out recorded, but his throws are becoming inaccurate. They still have good velocity, but they lack the precision he needs. He quickly falls behind in the score but manages to climb back and get a swinging strikeout. On the first pitch to Harada, Carlos attempts to steal and it results in a deep fly ball that barely goes foul. Tamba's leg, which seemed to be running purely on adrenaline, starts affecting him more after that close foul ball. With 2 outs recorded and the count at 3-1, Miyuki decides to call for an intentional walk. Coach Kataoka makes the decision to call for a pitcher substitution. Tamba gets removed from the game and Ajuin comes in as the relief pitcher. Tamba hands the baseball to Ajuin and tells him that he's the ace pitcher now. The philosophy is that whoever stands on the mound for Sidu becomes the ace pitcher, but it doesn't end there because Yuki tells Tamba that they'll put him back on the mound again soon. With 2 outs, 2 runners on base, and the game score sitting at 1-3 in favor of Inishiro, Ajuin prepares to face Narumiya in this crucial matchup. Narumiya views this pitching change as a complete insult to him. The spectators in the stands think it might just be a situational pitching move, simply putting a left-handed pitcher against a left-handed batter because it creates a favorable matchup for the pitcher. To face off against the talented Narumiya, Miyuki decides to get aggressive with his pitch calling, signaling for 3 consecutive fastballs to the inside part of the plate that Ajuin delivers perfectly to strike Narumiya out completely. Afterward, Chris explains to the team that Inishiro has been deliberately trying to shift Sidu's focus to the change-up pitch. He also mentions that Narumiya typically only throws 10 changeups per game and there's probably a specific reason why he won't throw more than that. Coach Kataoka instructs the entire team to forget about the changeup completely since they've already fallen into the enemy's tactical trap. On the pitcher's mound, Narumiya still feels furious about what happened last inning, and his teammates keep telling him to calm down and regain his composure. He practices his pitches while Harada realizes that Narumiya's pitch count is approaching 100 throws. During the top of the 8th inning, Furuya steps up to bat while Ajuin waits on deck and cheers him on enthusiastically. The first pitch turns out to be a sharp crossfire thrown inside, which surprises both Furuya and Ajuin with its movement. Narumiya continues pitching and the count reaches 1 ball and 2 strikes. Narumiya delivers the 4th pitch, a fastball to the outside corner, and Furuya makes contact, sending it to right field and reaching base safely. Ajuin comes up to bat next in the lineup. Ajuin executes a sacrifice bunt that successfully advances Furuya to the next base. Shiraisu steps up next and connects with the very first pitch he sees. Harada starts wondering why Sidhu's swings have suddenly gotten much sharper and more effective. Inashiro decides to call for a timeout, which clearly displeases Narumiya. Coach Kunitomo sends a messenger out to the pitcher's mound. Harada tells his teammates that they might have to concede 1 run, and the messenger agrees, saying that's exactly what Coach Kunitomo instructed. Narumiya feels unhappy about this strategy and tells his teammates they're not even in a dangerous situation since he's still pitching effectively. Kuromochi comes up to bat for Sidhu. The first pitch misses for a ball, followed by a strike. Furuya takes off running toward third base while Kuromochi attempts a bunt, almost missing the ball completely. Kuromochi bunts again on the next pitch while remembering Ryosuke's earlier words about wanting to be replaced at bat since he couldn't move the way he wanted to, and that they have reliable underclassmen who can help. Afterward, Ryusuke gets replaced by his younger brother Haruchi as a pinch hitter. Afterward, Haruchi steps up to the plate for his at-bat and Narumiya feels annoyed about Haruchi using a wooden bat and make a promise to himself that he'll break it with his pitch. Narumiya delivers his throw and Haruchi remembers how he's always been chasing after his older brother Ryosuke throughout his life. He makes contact and hits the ball toward left field while his wooden bat breaks from the impact, but he still manages to reach base safely as Shiraisu advances to second base. The cleanup hitters come up next in the batting order, with Isashiki first to bat. Mizono cheers loudly from the stands while remembering a previous conversation he had with Isashiki. During that memory, Zono was practicing his swing late one night when Isashiki found him and asked if he aims to hit a home run with every single at-bat since he swings so widely. Isashiki then added that the coach won't select him if he keeps swinging like that. Zono replied by saying that he's known for his powerful long hits and asked Isashiki how he manages to control his hits to the right side when his batting form seems so inconsistent. Isashiki felt annoyed by the question but answered that he does everything possible to chase the ball when he's standing at the plate, and he admitted to Zono that the batter waiting next to him is someone he'll never beat in a million years. Back in the current game, Narumiya throws his pitch but it goes outside for a ball. The count reaches 2-2 and the next pitch is still a ball, which walks Isashiki to first base. With the bases now completely loaded, Isashiki leaves the rest of the inning to Yuki. The first pitch Yuki faces is a forkball and he swings and misses completely. The next pitch gets past Harada but the catcher is quick enough to recover and save it. Narumiya shakes off Harada's pitch signals and decides to challenge Yuki directly with a fastball. Yuki makes contact but only manages a foul tip. They continue battling against each other and the count becomes 1 ball and 2 strikes. Afterward, Narumiya delivers a change-up pitch that completely shocks everyone on the Sidhu team. However, Yuki manages to make contact with the pitch and drives it effectively, allowing both Shiraisu and Haruchi to race home and score, making the score 4-3 and completely shifting the game's momentum in Sidhu's favor. Tamba can't help but shed tears of joy as he recalls Yuki's earlier promise about sending him back to the mound one more time. Narumiya acknowledges Yuki's skill for hitting that difficult pitch, but Harada can tell that Narumiya is hiding his deep frustration. Masuko connects with Narumiya's fastball and sends it toward the outfield, but Carlos positions himself well and catches the ball for an out. When Inashiro's defensive half ends, all of Yuki's teammates gather around to compliment him for successfully hitting the changeup. Yuki surprises everyone by confessing that he didn't actually know what pitch he hit and only realized he was standing on second base after the fact. Now it's Sidhu's turn to play defense in the field. Yamaoka makes contact with Ajuin's pitch and reaches base safely. Inashiro's 7th-hole batter, Hirai, executes a bunt and also manages to get on base. On the first pitch to Inashiro's 8th batter, Miyuki quickly attempts a pickoff throw to first base but fails to get the runner out. Inashiro shows they're not ready to give up without a fight. Ajuin throws a cutter on his second pitch and Sidhu successfully executes a double play to get out of the inning. Going into the 9th inning, Sidhu comes up to bat with the lead. Narumiya remains on the pitcher's mound despite his high pitch count, and Miyuki steps up as the first batter. Miyuki swings and misses the first pitch, then decides to take a calculated gamble by focusing on Narumiya's fastballs since he struggles against Narumiya's breaking balls. Miyuki makes solid contact and runs all the way to second base for a double. Furuya comes up to bat next, and Narumiya experiences a brief flashback to his painful memories from Inishiro's Koshien tournament loss the previous year. Afterward, Ajuin comes up to bat next and Coach Kataoka calls him over to the dugout before he steps up to the plate. Inishiro decides to call for a timeout and sends a messenger out to the pitcher's mound. Narumiya's teammates gather around to encourage him, and Narumiya responds by confessing that he's always thought about getting his revenge at Koshien tournament, then says he can't imagine Inishiro losing this game, which surprises and delights all his teammates. Narumiya has a vivid recollection of his difficult past experiences. After Inishiro's crushing defeat at last year's Summer Koshien tournament, Narumiya locked himself in his room for several days, leaving his teammates wondering if he might quit the baseball club entirely. Yoshizawa turns to the other second-year players and tells them they need to help Narumiya get back on his feet. 10 days later, Narumiya finally comes out of his room and starts running laps around the practice field. He remembers the words his senior teammates spoke about how they didn't blame him for their tournament loss. Narumiya feels angry thinking that his seniors probably said those things only because he was just a first-year player, so they didn't really believe in his abilities. Watching him from a distance are his fellow second-year teammates who feel relieved that he's finally done hiding in his room. Back in the current game, Coach Kataoka instructs Ajuin to stay relaxed and pretend to swing but intentionally miss the pitch. Ajuin tries to follow these instructions but accidentally taps Narumiya's fastball. Fortunately for Sidhu, it results in a foul ball. Narumiya throws again while recalling how intensely he trained and practiced for this summer tournament after everything came to a standstill following last year's disappointment. Ajuin successfully executes the bunt this time, but Narumiya races against Miyuki who is running toward home plate. Narumiya picks up the baseball and quickly tosses it to Harada, getting Miyuki out at the plate. Sidhu's offensive inning ends without scoring any additional runs. The crowd cheers enthusiastically for Narumiya's defensive play while both Furuya and Ajuin watch him with respect. Coach Kunitomo tells his team that they only need to get one run to win this game for sure. The Inishiro team puts Yabe as their pinch hitter who tries to hit for them. When Ajuin throws his first pitch, Yabe tries to bunt the ball but it goes foul instead. Yabe stares at Ajuin with mean eyes, and this makes the first-year player understand that this game is now at the point where they either win or lose everything. Ajuin throws the ball while thinking that he cannot lose this game and cannot let the pressure get to him. When Yabe hits the ball, Haruchi runs after it fast and throws it to first base to get Yabe out. The next batter who comes up is Carlos and he stands really close to home plate so he can stop any pitches that come to the inside part. This move puts a lot of pressure on Ajuin, but his catcher Miyuki still calls for an inside pitch anyway. The first pitch Ajuin throws misses and gets called a ball. Carlos hits the second pitch, but it goes foul. While he pitches, Ajuin starts thinking about what makes the Inishiro team play so hard, and he remembers seeing how serious Narumiya looked earlier and this makes him wonder why these players fight with so much effort. Even though Ajuin feels more and more pressure, he keeps trying to attack the batters with his pitches. Carlos hits a fly ball that Sakai catches easily, which makes the second out of this inning. Now the Sidhu team needs just one more out to reach their dream stage that they have been working on all season. The next batter who steps up is Shirakawa, and he uses the same plan that Carlos used when he faced Ajuin. Shirakawa fights it out with Ajuin, who throws each pitch harder than the one before, and then one of Ajuin's pitches hits Shirakawa right on his head, which shocks everyone watching. Even though he got hit by the ball, Shirakawa stands up and lets out a loud yell. All the Sidhu players run to the pitcher's mound to check on their teammate, while Shirakawa goes back to his team's dugout where he gets help from the trainers. The teammates try to make Ajuin feel better about what happened, but Miyuki sees that Ajuin acted differently after he hit the batter with the ball, so he sends a signal to his coach. Miyuki tells Ajuin that he did a good job pitching. However, Coach Kataoka decides to change pitchers and sends in Kawakami to take Ajuin's place on the mound. Afterward, Carlos stands on first base while Kawakami tries to get Yoshizawa out. Carlos runs to second base and steals it, but Miyuki lets him go because he's thinking about ending this game on the fifth throw. But Yoshizawa just taps the ball and it goes foul. Kawakami and Yoshizawa keep fighting with each other with pitch after pitch. This goes on until Kawakami ends up giving Yoshizawa a walk to first base. Harada comes up to hit next. He really wants to finish this game with his bat. He gets tight and grips his bat too hard. But then Narumiya tells him not to try and be the hero all by himself. Harada thinks back to what Coach Kunitomo told them about just focusing on getting one run. Harada relaxes his grip and swings at Kawakami's throw. The ball gets hit and Yoshizawa starts running towards second base. Haruchi grabs the ball and tosses it over to Kuramochi in second. But Yoshizawa makes it there safely before the tag. Kuramochi looks over at third base and sees nobody there. Then he spots Carlos running as fast as he can toward home plate. Kuromochi throws the ball to Miyuki behind home plate. But Carlos slides in and touches home before Miyuki can tag him out. The score is now tied up at 4-4. All the Sea-Doo guys just stood there shocked at what happened. But Coach Kataoka yells out loud to remind his team that this game isn't finished yet. The Sea-Doo players get their heads back in the game and focus again. Then Narumiya steps up and hits a really long ball that flies way out to center field. Both Isashiki and Shirasu try their best to catch the ball as it comes down, but neither one of them can get to it in time. The ball drops and Inashiro gets their 5th run of the game. All the Inashiro players start celebrating and cheering while Ajuin just watches everything happen with his mouth wide open in shock. Afterward, Inashiro wins, and when all the players line up after the game, Ajuin's teammates are crying, but he looks over at the Inashiro guys. They're making fun of Narumiya, who is also crying and getting mad at them. Later on, Narumiya talks to reporters with his coach while the rest of his team walks out of the stadium. The girls who manage Sea-Doo's team give Harada the paper cranes they made. They wished Inashiro good luck at the big tournament. Harada takes them and thinks about how Yuki said nice things to him when they lined up. He thinks about whether he could have been that nice if his team had lost instead. Some reporters talk to Coach Kataoka. He tells them he feels bad that he couldn't get his team to the big tournament. Outside the stadium, Yuki says sorry to all the Sea-Doo fans for not doing what they hoped. But he also thanks them for cheering and supporting the team. A guy named Mine Fujio talks to another reporter. He says that Sea-Doo kept winning games before this by switching pitchers. But maybe they lost this game because they didn't have one really great pitcher who could handle everything. On the bus ride back, Ajuin thinks about why they lost when they were winning before. His hat falls out of his hands, and when he picks it up, he sees Yuki crying. That's when Ajuin finally got it, as they were just 1 out away from going to the big tournament. Ajuin starts crying too and thinks about what he told his friends back home about wanting to play baseball with this team forever. But then he remembers that they actually lost. The Sea-Doo team really lost. Later, Masuko packs his stuff to leave the room. He says Kuromochi good luck before he goes. Kuromochi decides to check on the other guys in their rooms, but Ajuin wants to stay put. Furuya is outside running around the baseball field by himself. Later, Kuromochi finds Miyuki watching a video of the game they just lost. Miyuki tells Kuromochi that without the older guys on the team, going to the big tournament is just going to be another dream that won't come true. Ajuin decides to go outside, where he runs into Furuya on the field, and Furuya tells Ajuin that he's going to be the main pitcher for the team now. Later, Mizono tells Haruchi that he's jealous because Haruchi got to play in the big game. Haruchi feels really sorry for him deep down. But then Mizono says something that shocks Haruchi. He admits that he was waiting for the older guys to quit the team. Mizono says he really wanted to play in that game, and now it's their turn to be the older players. Mizono and some other guys try to practice without anyone knowing. But Haruchi shows up and joins them. Coach Ray and Coach Kataoka watch from somewhere nearby. Then Miyuki and Kuromochi show up too. At dinner time in the dorms, all the players talk about who's going to be the new team captain. All of a sudden, Ajuin stands up and yells at Furuya that he's going to be the best pitcher ever. Everyone gets surprised by this. Haruchi thinks something must have happened to make Ajuin act like this. Kuromochi thinks that Ajuin is acting like his normal self again. Ajuin asks Miyuki if he can watch the video of their lost game again. Then Miyuki asks Furuya if he wants to watch it too, but Furuya just shrugs his shoulders and says he already knows what he did wrong. Nori gets up from the table and walks out of the dining room. While Miyuki and Ajuin watch the game video together, Miyuki thinks that Ajuin is trying really hard to get over losing. But he's worried about what's going on with Nori. He thinks back to what Narumiya said about how Inashiro would still be the best team even without him playing. He also remembers what Shirakawa told him. All this makes Miyuki feel excited, and he hopes Narumiya will come back even stronger next time. Coach Kataoka calls Kuromochi and Mizono to talk to them. He asks them to help support Miyuki because he's going to be the new captain. Miyuki will also be the 4th batter and still catch for the team. Out on the field, Miyuki tells everyone on the team that he wants to see real results from their work. Afterward, everyone is practicing outside, and Miyuki thinks about what Mayachi said about helping Nori feel better. He's not sure how to do it though, and this makes him mess up a throw to third base. Everyone looks surprised when this happens. At the same time, over at Hashin Koshien Stadium, the summer tournament starts up and Inashiro beats their first team easily. Sea-Doo plays a practice game against Saitama Sakai. Furuya throws really hard and tells Miyuki he's doing this to get stronger and last longer in games. But after 7 innings, Furuya gets tired, so Ajuin comes in to pitch. He strikes out all the batters he faces. Miyuki says something about his pitching that makes Ajuin mad. In their second practice game, Nori walks too many batters and his teammates don't know what's going on with him. Back at the dorms, Ajuin gets really angry when he sees a newspaper story about Inashiro. The other guys talk about who Inashiro will play next in the big tournament. It's going to be Seiho High and they have this really good hitter named Shuzo Sano. At the tournament, Narumiya does well and strikes out Sano. Seiho's coach tells Sano in the dugout that even though they're playing well, they came here to win and not just to have fun. In the 8th inning, Inashiro finally gets a run. Then in the 9th, Sano waits for a slower pitch but Narumiya gets him out with a fastball. Inashiro moves on to the next round. The Sea-Doo players watch Inashiro's TV interview back at their dorm. Miyuki talks about what kind of person Narumiya is. Ajuin thinks that their older teammates were just as good as the Inashiro players, but they still lost the game. They play another practice game, this time against KO, and Sea-Doo wins. Meanwhile at the tournament, Inashiro makes it all the way to the championship game. Miyuki tells Nori they should watch the whole thing. Then Isashiki comes into the room and Ajuin asks what's so special about seeing Koshien and Isashiki tells Ajuin he should go see it himself. Before the championship game at Koshien, Narumiya talks to his team and thanks all his teammates for helping him get this far and asks them to stick with him for just one more day. He looks at Harada and says they're going to win the whole thing. Harada nods and agrees with him. The next day is August 21st, and it's time for the finals. Teams from West Tokyo sit in the stands to watch. When Narumiya walks out to the pitcher's mound, Ajuin sits there wondering what it must feel like to stand in that same spot. Narumiya gets ready to throw his first pitch while thinking that he and his Inashiro team are about to see what it's like to be the best team in all of Japan. While all this happens, the older players from Ikadai 3rd High decide to go hang out at the beach. Tamba goes with them because Monica asked him to come along. Both guys think back to when they lost their tournament game and what they want to do next. Back at Sea-Doo, all the players get pumped up by the fans watching them practice. Kuramochi says he was hoping Inashiro would win so that Narumiya would feel bad and not play as well next year. Miyuki doesn't think that's right though. The whole team watches as Furuya and Ajuin run laps around the field. Ajuin thinks back to that last play when Inashiro lost and remembers watching Harada's interview afterward. He decides that he wants to play on that Koshien stage too someday. Up in the stands, some guy who calls himself an outsider starts asking a Sea-Doo graduate about the team's pitchers. The team practices their hitting while these strangers watch everything they do. Miyuki tries to help Nori feel better by giving him a special job that only he can handle. Later on, this same outsider runs into Ajuin, Furuya, and Haruchi. He tells them straight up that Sea-Doo is going to lose and calls the whole team a bunch of people who like pain. This really makes Ajuin mad. It turns out this outsider guy is actually Okiai Hiramitsu, and he's going to be Sea-Doo's new assistant coach. Coach Kataoka tells Okiai that they're going to play a practice game against Yakushi to see how strong the current team really is. Oda remembers when Kataoka told everyone about the practice game they were going to play against Yakushi. Both Ajuin and Furuya got excited because they wanted to get back to Raichi for what happened before. Meanwhile, Kanemaru and Toju were both thinking this would be their chance to show Coach Kataoka what they could do. Now during their current game, Furuya gets moved out to left field while Ajuin takes over pitching. Coach Oda asks Kataoka if the upcoming game against Yakushi why everyone seems so pumped up. Kataoka says the players just want to see how strong they've gotten. Over at Yakushi's field, Raichi practices hitting home runs while Sanada pitches really well. Coach Reizu tells Sanada he should take a break. Raichi thinks about how he's going to crush both of Sea-Doo's pitchers when they play. At Sea-Doo, the new assistant coach Okiai watches the guys practice their batting. He wonders if this good feeling he sees around the team is something they learned from the older players who used to be here. On August 28th, Sea-Doo plays against Arata High. Haruchi makes an amazing play that gets all the fans excited. Coach Kataoka tells Kawakami to rest up because he's going to pitch against Yakushi. On a different field, Furuya helps Ajuin stretch when the Yakushi players show up. Raichi jumps right over the fence and tells both Ajuin and Furuya that he's going to destroy them. Sanada brags that if Yakushi beats Sea-Doo, it'll be their 20th win in a row. The game between Sea-Doo and Yakushi finally starts. Yakushi puts Mishima Yuta as their starting pitcher and Kuramochi comes up to bat first. Kuramochi gets a hit and runs all the way to second base. Haruchi tries to bunt but doesn't make it to first base safely. Mizono strikes out swinging. Now there are 2 outs with a runner on third base and Miyuki steps up to bat. Mishima throws a pitch but it gets past the catcher, letting Sea-Doo score their first run. Miyuki hit a fly ball to first base for the 3rd out. Furuya asks Coach Kataoka if he can pitch for the whole entire game. Kataoka says no and explains that this game isn't just about him. But he tells Furuya that if he pitches well, maybe he can throw more innings. Afterward, Sidu can't get any runs because they hit into a double play. But Furuya keeps doing great on the mound and strikes out all the Yakushi batters he faces. Then Raichi steps into the batter's box for his turn. Everyone expects this to be a big battle, but Furuya actually strikes him out too. He throws his fastball so hard that they completely overpower Raichi. Ajuin watches this happen and feels amazed by what he sees. Then he remembers what Furuya told him before about how he's going to be the team's main pitcher. When the 5th inning starts, Toja gets a hit off Mishima's forkball pitch. Kuramochi bunts the ball to move Toja to second base, and then Toju advances to third base after Haruchi's at-bat. Now there's one out with runners on third and first base. Mizono comes up to bat but gets out, ending the inning without any runs. In the 6th inning, Furuya hit a really long ball and this let Miyuki run all the way home to score. This makes Ajuin really mad and frustrated. He had asked Coach Kataoka earlier if he could start pitching in the 5th inning, but Kataoka said no. The coach told Ajuin that watching the game carefully and getting ready to pitch are both really important jobs for a relief pitcher. This really shocks Ajuin because he didn't think about it that way before. When Yakushi comes up to bat in the bottom of the 6th, Furuya is still on the mound pitching. But he looks like he's getting tired now. When a Yakushi player hits the ball, Furuya doesn't run over to cover first base like he should. Then he walks the next batter he faces. Now Yakushi has runners on first and second base with no outs, which is a dangerous situation for Sidu. But Furuya finds his strength again and throws a low pitch that strikes out the next batter. Afterward, everyone is really impressed with how well Furuya was pitched and even Raichi seems amazed by what he saw. Coach Kataoka walks over to Kanemaru and tells him that Ajuin will pitch the next inning. Kanemaru goes to let Ajuin know while Furuya still has that intense look in his eyes. Kataoka tells Furuya that he's expecting big things from him when the fall tournament comes around, then sends him out to play left field. When the 7th inning starts, Toju comes up to bat and now Sanada is pitching for Yakushi. Sanada throws his pitch and gets Toju out right away. Kuramochi bats next and Sanada throws him a cutter followed by a pitch on the inside. Kuramochi contacts the next pitch but gets out too. Over at the field area, Miyuki and Ajuin watch Sanada pitch and Miyuki talks about how much energy and excitement Sanada brings to his team. Ajuin thinks about what he needs to do to make Coach Kataoka really notice him. When Yakushi comes up to bat in the bottom of the 7th, Ajuin goes out to the mound to practice his pitching motion. Haruchi wonders if Ajuin is going to do his usual thing where he yells really loud before he starts pitching, but he notices that Ajuin is acting different than normal. Nori also worries about whether Ajuin will be okay since he was throwing so much in the field earlier. Miyuki calls for an inside pitch to the first batter. He thinks that if Ajuin wants to become the team's main pitcher, he needs to stick with his own way of doing things. Ajuin throws the ball way too low and Miyuki signals to him that his shoulder is too tight and stiff. Ajuin throws another ball that misses the strike zone, and then throws one right down the middle that the batter hits easily. Then Raichi steps up to bat and smashes a home run over the fence. Miyuki calls for a timeout to talk to his pitcher. But Ajuin keeps giving up more hits and walks another batter on top of that. Now the bases are loaded with no outs for Yakushi, which shocks everyone watching. Miyuki walks out to the mound and reminds Ajuin that his teammates are all there to help him. The other players on the field tell him the same thing. Ajuin throws while thinking that he hasn't really done anything good yet. Afterward, Coach Kataoka tells Kanemaru to make sure Ajuin puts ice on his shoulder the right way. Kanemaru brings the ice over and thinks about how this is the first time he's ever seen Ajuin look so defeated. Ajuin just sits there quietly without saying a word ever since he got taken out of the game. Earlier, in a flashback, Coach Kataoka had asked Miyuki how Ajuin was doing with his pitching. Miyuki told him that Ajuin's inside pitches have been missing the target lately, and it's probably because of what happened when he hit that batter in the finals game. That's when Kataoka decided to call Furuya in and take Ajuin out, which really shocked Ajuin. When Furuya gets to the mound, he asks for the baseball and says there's no reason for two pitchers to be standing out there. Ajuin actually laughs a little and says sorry for handing over the game when things were so tough. He walks off the mound even though he really doesn't want to leave. The game keeps going and Yakushi ends up winning. After it's over, Coach Kataoka thanks Coach Reizu for such a good practice game. The new assistant coach Okiai notices that everything Yakushi does revolves around their best pitcher and their best hitter. He thinks he wouldn't want to play against such an energetic team like them. Later that afternoon, people in the stands talk about the game and wonder what happened to last year's strong Sidu team. Coach Kataoka gets mad at his players and tells them he's going to make the starting lineup more flexible. He says whoever is playing the best will get to play, no matter what grade they're in. He lets the team go but asks Ajuin, Kawakami and Miyuki to stick around. They have a short meeting with Oki and Coach Uda. During this meeting, everyone finds out that Ajuin has something called yips, which makes it hard for him to throw strikes. Coach Kataoka tells Ajuin to practice by himself and to stay away from throwing baseballs for now. The next day, the other first-year players find out about Ajuin's problem. Chris shows up and asks Kanemaru to tell him what's been going on. Meanwhile, at Inashiro High, two reporters named Mine and Owada watch the third-year players practice their hitting. Some of these guys got picked to play in a special game between the US and Japan. They ask Harada who the new team captain is going to be. Harada tells them it's Fukui Kento, who doesn't usually start games but is the most responsible guy on the team. Harada also mentions that Narumiya is practicing in the field but hasn't been allowed to actually pitch since he came back from Koshien. Over at the field, Narumiya gets in the way of practice, which annoys Itsuki a bit. Itsuki tells Narumiya he thinks he should practice catching his pitches more. But Narumiya says he'll throw the ball wherever Itsuki puts his glove and that he's not planning to lose to anyone. Later, all the other players practice their pitching and hitting while Ajuin just runs around the field over and over, looking really frustrated. Afterward, Kuramochi tells Miyuki that he's worried about what's happening with Ajuin. He gets really mad when Miyuki says that the team comes first, not individual players. But then Miyuki admits that it's partly his fault that Ajuin fell apart like this. He also says the team really can't afford to lose Ajuin because of this yips problem. During practice, Coach Kataoka tells Ajuin to join the batting and fielding drills. He puts Ajuin in the outfield and Ajuin does what he's told. Haruchi thinks Ajuin isn't acting like his normal self, but he figures Ajuin has accepted the situation he's in. But Haruchi is wrong because Ajuin gets really annoyed when Coach Kataoka tells Furuya to pitch during practice. When Sidhu plays their first real game of the fall season, Furuya wears the ace number on his jersey and does amazing at both pitching and hitting. Ajuin sits in the dugout cheering for his team while wearing number 18. At school, some students talk about why Ajuin is even on the team roster when he's doing so badly at practice. Ajuin hears them saying this and it makes him mad. Meanwhile, the older players who have already graduated talk about how the teams get picked for the fall tournament. Isashiki says he really misses being able to hit baseballs. On a day when it's raining, Ajuin runs around the field by himself and wonders why Coach Kataoka even puts him on the roster. Furuya runs past him because he wants everyone to see him as a real ace pitcher. Ajuin doesn't want Furuya to get ahead of him, so he starts running really fast to catch up. This turns their warm-up into a race that makes both of them really tired. Kawakami tells them to slow down since practice is just getting started. Coach Kataoka tells Ajuin to go practice in the field area. In the field, Ajuin gets told to throw inside pitches while Coach Kataoka stands in the batter's box. Someone else records his pitching on video. Ajuin has a really hard time with this and assistant coach Oki wonders why Coach Kataoka cares so much about Ajuin. Later, Miyuki tells Ajuin not to think too much since his control isn't that good anyway. Oki asks Coach Kataoka how far he wants to go in this fall tournament. Oki is worried about the team but thinks they should give Furuya more experience so he can grow into the ace that Sidhu needs. In the end, Sidhu beats Mino High in the second round of group selection and Miyuki yells at Furuya about throwing too many pitches and not saving energy. This makes Ajuin mad, but he still asks Kanemaru to practice with him later. That night, Ajuin works on his pitching. Kariba catches while Kanemaru pretends to bat. Kanemaru gets annoyed because Ajuin won't throw inside. He yells at Ajuin to stop being a coward and actually aims like he wants to hit him. Ajuin says thanks but tells Kanemaru he's not trying to bean anyone. Afterward, Miyuki and others watch Ajuin's practice session and Miyuki feels bad about dragging Chris into this mess. Chris brushes it off, saying he'd been wanting to share that advice anyway. Maybe it'll cure Ajuin's inside pitch phobia. Round 3 puts Sidhu against Seisho High. However, Miyuki asks if Furuya thinks this is a solo sport and reminds him to notice his teammates. Play continues but Furuya keeps bleeding runs. Kataoka pulls him for Kawakami and sticks Furuya in left field. Up in the stands, Oki thinks this substitution came too soon. Better to let Furuya work through his struggles as that's how aces develop. Sidhu pulls out a win, but Kataoka rips into them about sloppy play. He asks Miyuki if Summer's lessons got erased from his memory already. The whole squad gets punishment laps. Furuya wants a do-over while Ajuin fumes about riding the bench again. The graduated guys Tamba, Ryosuke, and Kadota discuss what they just witnessed. That evening, Oki corners Miyuki and Furuya to explain his coaching philosophy. Afterward, Miyuki can tell something weird is going on but figures that no matter what's happening with the coaching staff, Kataoka is still their coach. Yuki goes to talk with President Uda about how he and the other graduated guys want to help out the baseball club. When the current team gets to the field, they're shocked to see their older teammates sitting in the dugout. Isashiki yells at them for walking around like slow turtles. Mayachi asks the second-year guys when they start acting like big shots. Ryosuke jokes that they came back just to pick on everyone. Back in the staff room earlier, Yuki had asked if they could have their retirement game happen sooner than planned. Kataoka wanted to know why they were in such a hurry. Yuki said that he and the other third years had something important to tell the younger players. Kataoka figured this meant they wanted a practice game, and Yuki agreed for all the graduated guys. He told Kataoka this was the only way they could still help the team. For this scrimmage game, Miyuki gets put in charge of the current team while Chris coaches the graduated players. Coach Kataoka becomes the umpire for the game. Isashiki tells his younger teammates not to take it easy because the older guys plan to go all out against them. This gets Ajuin, Furuya, and Haruchi really pumped up and excited. Mayachi and Tamba work together as pitchers and catchers for the third-year team. They manage to keep the current team from scoring any runs in the top of the first inning. When the graduated guys come up to bat at the bottom of the first, Kasunoki Fumiya leads off. He's impressed with Furuya's pitching but thinks it's not quite as fast as he expected it to be. He makes contact with the ball but gets out. Ryosuke notices that Furuya is trying to pace himself better. He battles against the first-year pitcher by fouling off several pitches, which eventually leads to a walk. Furuya throws a pitch that seems to float toward Isashiki, and the third year purposely swings at it. He says he's always wanted to smack one of Furuya's high pitches. Now there's one out with runners on second and third base when Yuki comes up to bat. Furuya throws a splitter and Yuki swings but misses completely. He throws another splitter then one more but this time Yuki connects and sends the ball flying to center field. However, the team learns that Coach Kataoka is going to quit and it surprises them. Isashiki gets mad at his younger teammates and asks if they're even trying to score runs since they don't seem to be putting any pressure on the older guys. Kuramochi asks Miyuki if he already knew about Coach Kataoka leaving, but Miyuki looks just as shocked as everyone else. Coach Kataoka tells them to get back out on the field and Miyuki tries to act like it's no big deal. Mizono asks Miyuki what's going on with him and admits that he actually did know about the resignation. Miyuki says he didn't really know for sure, he just thought it might happen since Coach Okiai isn't a Sidu graduate like the other coaches. He tells everyone they can talk about this later because right now they need to focus on the game. The whole team starts thinking about what they can do to pay back their third-year teammates and their coach for everything they've done. Ajuin asks Kanemaru if things like this happen a lot. Kanemaru says it's pretty normal, especially for teams that want to make it to nationals like Sidu does. Ajuin doesn't really know how to deal with all this, but he and Furuya both agree that Coach Kataoka still hasn't really accepted them as good players yet. Out on the field, Miyuki remembers what Yuki told him about staying strong even when things get tough, and how it's his job as captain to lead the team through hard times. He tells Furuya to stop worrying about saving energy and just go all out, which surprises the pitcher. Back in the field, Miyuki tells everyone that finding out about Coach Kataoka leaving is really hard, but they're still in the middle of a game. The third-year guys are giving everything they have, so the least the current team can do is show them respect by playing their best too. Tamba gets the current team's batters out easily, and Isashiki asks why he couldn't pitch this well during the finals game. Afterward, there are 2 outs with runners on first base and Yuki comes up to bat. Ryosuke steals a base but then Furuya strikes out Yuki, which surprises everybody watching. Ajuin thinks it must just be luck. Miyuki feels relieved that telling Furuya to go all out is actually working, since he was worried Furuya might end up walking a bunch of batters instead. The whole team gets energized by this, and Coach Okiai thinks that Furuya has always been the type of player who performs better under pressure. Miyuki tells Ajuin and Kawakami to get ready to go in the game at any time. Kuramochi asks if Ajuin is really okay to pitch, and Miyuki says he wants Ajuin to get some game experience. Then he tells the whole team that they're going to win the fall tournament, which will get them to Koshien. Later, Miyuki hit off Tamba, even though Tamba had been striking out batters before Miyuki came up. Kawakami takes over pitching in the bottom of the 5th inning and manages to keep the third-year team from scoring in both the 7th and 8th innings. Afterward, Chris puts up a good fight by fouling off pitch after pitch, but finally Ajuin manages to throw that low and away pitch just like Chris always wanted him to and he gets Chris out. The other third-year batters have a really hard time making solid contact with Ajuin's outside pitches, and the game ends up tied when regulation time is over. As both teams line up after 9 innings, Coach Kataoka says the game isn't finished yet because some of the third-year guys still haven't gotten to play. For the extra innings, Chris becomes the catcher while Isashiki gets his turn on the mound as pitcher. Ryosuke makes jokes about Isashiki, telling everyone they should start stretching their shoulders because Isashiki probably won't throw any strikes. Coaches Uda and Rei watch from the sidelines and think about how Coach Kataoka built these players into a real team instead of just focusing on individual stars or only the starting players. When the extra innings finally end, the third-year team wins the game. Afterward, Miyuki heads to the meeting where they draw names to see who they'll play against in the group selection tournament. He thinks it doesn't really matter which team they end up facing because Sidhu only has one goal in mind: making it to nationals. He remembers what Yuki said to the whole team at the end of their scrimmage game about the importance of practicing hard. How long do you think it will take for Ajuan to become the ace? Comment fastball if you'd like a part 2 of the series, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button.